Hello guys, welcome to Monkey DFIC. So in this video, we will see what if Luffy found the One Piece early. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Accidental Crowned Nami. Are you sure this is the right direction? Luffy shouted over the howling wind, one hand gripping the straw hat on his head while the other clutched the Going Merry's railing. The sky had darkened to an angry purple-black in minutes, and rain pelted the small caravel like bullets. How should I know? Nami yelled back, struggling with the ship's wheel as massive waves tossed them around. This storm came out of nowhere. The barometer didn't show any warning. The Going Merry groaned against the battering waves. They'd only been in the Grand Line for a few weeks since leaving the East Blue after defeating Arlong, and the sea seemed determined to remind them they were rookies. Sanji sprinted across the deck, kicking empty barrels out of the way. The storage hatch is secured. Usopp's below trying to patch a leak. A massive wall of water rose before them, towering higher than the mast. Everyone hold on. Nami screamed as the wave crashed down. Zoro emerged from the cabin, 3 katanas securely tied to his waist. This isn't normal, he muttered, eyeing the unnaturally swirling clouds above. Luffy stretched his arms, wrapping them multiple times around the mast. This is awesome, he laughed despite the danger, eyes wide with excitement. It's not awesome, you idiot, his crew shouted in unison. The ship lurched violently as something massive moved beneath them, sending everyone sprawling across the deck. A crack of lightning illuminated the sea ahead, revealing a small island where Nami's charts showed empty ocean. An island. Luffy's face split into a grin. Let's go there. We don't have a choice. Nami pointed at the whirlpool forming behind them, dragging them forward. The current's pulling us straight toward it. The Going Merry shot forward like a cork from a bottle, riding the churning waters toward the mysterious island. As they approached, the storm intensified, lightning striking all around them, the air crackling with electricity. This doesn't feel right, Zoro growled, unsheathing one sword reflexively. It's like the island doesn't want visitors. Usopp emerged from below deck, soaking wet and trembling. Ivy patched the leak, but I think I'm coming down with can't approach that scary island disease. Shut up and help with the sail. Sanji barked, already working the rigging. They crashed into the shallows with bone-jarring force. The Going Merry listed to one side, lodged firmly on a sandbar just offshore from a dense jungle. As suddenly as it had appeared, the storm began to subside, clouds dispersing to reveal a star-filled sky. Everyone okay? Luffy called out, untangling his stretched limbs from the mast. Groans answered him as his crewmates picked themselves up. Nami stumbled to her feet, checking her log pose. This doesn't make sense. The pose isn't pointing to this island at all. It's like it doesn't exist on any known route. Luffy leapt onto the railing, staring at the jungle with undisguised enthusiasm. Mystery Island. I bet there's adventure here. And probably monsters, Usopp whimpered. And maybe fresh ingredients, Sanji added, lighting a cigarette despite his soaked clothes. Zoro merely grunted, already assessing the damage to their ship. We're stuck here until the tide rises anyway, Nami sighed, wringing water from her orange hair. We might as well explore and find fresh water while we wait. The moon emerged from behind the dissipating clouds, illuminating something that made them all freeze. At the island's center, barely visible above the tree-line, stood the unmistakable outline of ruins, massive stone structures half reclaimed by jungle. Whoa! A mystery castle. Luffy's eyes sparkled with excitement. Those are ruins, not a castle, Nami corrected, but her eyes had the familiar gleam that appeared whenever treasure might be involved. Ancient ruins often contain valuable artifacts. Or deadly traps, Usopp countered, knees knocking. Sanji hopped over the railing onto the wet sand. Let's make camp on the beach tonight and explore tomorrow. Everyone needs dry clothes and hot food. Good idea, Zoro agreed, jumping down with a splash. I'll gather firewood. I'll come with you, Luffy announced, launching himself off the ship with a rubbery snap. No, you won't, Nami grabbed his vest collar midair. You're helping secure the ship. Last time Zoro went for firewood alone, he was lost for 3 days. That was because someone moved the ship, Zoro grumbled, stomping toward the jungle's edge. We were anchored in the same spot the whole time. Nami shouted after him. Within an hour, they had a cheerful fire going on the beach. Sanji had prepared a hearty fish stew from their supplies, and everyone sat around the flames in dry clothes, warming themselves after the ordeal. This island gives me the creeps, Usopp whispered, glancing over his shoulder at the dark jungle. Did you notice there are no animal sounds? No birds, no insects, nothing. Luffy, mouth full of stew, paused mid-chew. Yeah, it's super quiet. Even Zoro seemed on edge, his hand never straying far from his swords. Something's not right about this place. Nami spread out her charts on a dry patch of sand. This island shouldn't exist. According to every map of the Grand Line, there's nothing but open ocean for miles around where we are. Maybe it's a phantom island, Sanji suggested, stirring the pot over the fire. I've heard sailors' tales about islands that appear and disappear. Or maybe your maps are wrong, Luffy shrugged, reaching for another bowl. Nami bopped him on the head. My maps are perfect. As night deepened, they took turns keeping watch. Nothing disturbed their camp, but the unnatural silence of the island kept everyone on edge. When dawn broke, they were all bleary-eyed but alive. Luffy stretched his arms high above his head. All right. Time to explore the mystery ruins. We should check the ship first, Nami insisted. The tide's coming in, we might be able to float her off the sandbar. After a quick breakfast, they waded out to the Going Merry. The rising tide had indeed begun to lift the ship, but Usopp discovered a damaged rudder that needed repair before they could navigate safely. I'll need a few hours to fix this, he said, examining the splintered wood. Then we have time for adventure. Luffy declared, already halfway to shore. Nami grabbed her staff and a bag. I guess we might as well check out those ruins. There could be valuable artifacts we could sell. I'll stay with Usopp and guard the ship, Sanji volunteered. You'll need someone here in case the tide changes suddenly. Zoro nodded. I'll go with these 2 troublemakers to make sure they don't get killed. Hey! Nami and Luffy protested simultaneously. The jungle was dense but not impenetrable. What struck them most as they hiked toward the center of the island was the continued absence of wildlife. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, not even a lizard skittered across their path. It's like everything ran away, Luffy noted, unusually perceptive. Or maybe there was never anything alive here except plants. Plants are alive too, idiot, Nami muttered, but she understood what he meant. They walked for nearly an hour before the trees thinned, revealing the ruins they'd glimpsed from the beach. Stone structures, weathered by time but still imposing, rose from the jungle floor. What might have once been a grand plaza was now cracked and overrun with vines, but the scale suggested a significant civilization had once thrived here. Whoa! Luffy breathed, eyes wide. Even Zoro looked impressed. These are old. Really old. Nami ran her fingers over strange symbols carved into a fallen column. I've never seen writing like this before. This isn't like the poneglyphs archaeologists talk about, but it's definitely ancient. They wandered deeper into the ruins, passing crumbling archways and toppled statues. At the center stood what appeared to be a temple or palace, its entrance partially collapsed but still accessible. Let's go in. Luffy charged forward without hesitation. Wait, you rubber-brained idiot. Nami called, but he'd already disappeared inside. She and Zoro exchanged exasperated looks before following. The interior was surprisingly intact. Shafts of light penetrated through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The walls were covered with elaborate carvings depicting battles, ceremonies, and what looked like a journey across seas. These pictures tell a story, Nami observed, tracing the carvings with her fingertips. Zoro frowned at a particular scene. These look like ships fighting sea monsters. Maybe this was some kind of seafaring civilization. Guys! Check this out. Luffy's voice echoed from deeper inside. They followed his voice to find him standing before an enormous stone door. More of the strange symbols were carved around its frame, and at its center was a circular indentation. I can't open it, Luffy complained, pushing against the massive stone. Even with his rubber-enhanced strength, the door wouldn't budge. Nami examined the indentation. This looks like a keyhole of some kind. They must have used a specific object to open it. Or, Luffy grinned, winding up his arm, we could just break it down. Gum gum pistol. No, wait, Nami's protest came too late. Luffy's fist smashed into the center of the door. Instead of breaking, the entire floor beneath them shuddered and then gave way with a tremendous crack. All three plummeted into darkness, their screams echoing off stone walls as they fell. Luffy grabbed his friends, wrapping his stretchy limbs around them protectively as they tumbled down what felt like a natural shaft through the earth. They crashed through several wooden platforms before landing hard in a subterranean chamber, Luffy absorbing most of the impact. Ow wow, he groaned, unwinding his arms from around Nami and Zoro. You idiot! Nami punched him on the head. You could have killed us. Zoro was already on his feet, swords drawn, scanning their surroundings. Save it for later. Look where we are. The chamber was vast and clearly man-made. Unlike the ruins above, this place seemed perfectly preserved. Ornate pillars supported a high ceiling, and the walls gleamed with inlaid metals that caught what little light filtered down from the shaft they'd fallen through. But what drew their attention was the center of the room. On a raised dais sat a small chest, unadorned except for the same circular symbol they'd seen on the door above. Around it, neatly arranged in a circle, were strange objects, a sword with a curved blade, a compass-like instrument, what appeared to be fossilized fruit, and several pieces of jewelry. Treasure. Nami's eyes turned to Beri symbols, her anger instantly forgotten. Hold on, Zoro placed a hand on her shoulder. This feels like a trap. Luffy, however, had already bounced to his feet and was approaching the dais. Something about the chest called to him in a way he couldn't explain. Luffy! Be careful! Nami hissed. He ignored her, stepping onto the dais. When nothing happened, he reached for the chest. Don't touch anything. Zoro warned. Too late. Luffy's hands closed around the small chest. It was surprisingly light, fitting comfortably in his palms. As soon as he lifted it, the room trembled slightly, and the objects surrounding where the chest had sat began to glow with a faint blue light. What's happening? Nami whispered, backing away. The glowing intensified, then suddenly stopped. Silence fell. That was weird, Luffy said, turning the chest over in his hands. I wonder what's inside. Put it back, Luffy, Zoro's voice was tense. We don't know what we're dealing with. But curiosity had already won. Luffy found a small latch on the side of the chest and flicked it open. The lid rose smoothly, revealing the contents. Inside was a single piece of parchment, folded many times to fit the small space. Beside it lay a simple red gemstone that caught the light strangely, seeming to contain swirling patterns within. That's it? Nami peered over Luffy's shoulder, unable to hide her disappointment. All this for a rock and a piece of paper. Luffy carefully removed the parchment and unfolded it. The same strange symbols covered its surface, but in the center was a drawing, a map unlike any they'd seen before. It didn't depict land masses or seas, but rather what appeared to be currents or flows, connecting various points marked with symbols. I can't read any of this, Luffy frowned, turning the parchment different directions. Nami took it from him gently. This is incredible. These markings. I think they show currents that aren't on any modern maps. And these symbols could represent islands or locations. While they examined the map, Luffy picked up the red gemstone. As soon as his fingers closed around it, the stone grew warm, and the swirling patterns within seemed to move faster. Whoa! The mystery rock likes me, he exclaimed. Zoro, who had been keeping watch, suddenly tensed. We need to go. Now. Why? What's wrong? Nami looked up. Listen. They fell silent. From above came the unmistakable sounds of movement, footsteps and voices. Someone else is in the ruins, Zoro whispered. They might have seen us enter. Marines? Nami suggested fearfully. Or other pirates, Zoro replied. Either way, we're trapped down here unless we can find another way out. Luffy pocketed the gemstone and carefully folded the map. Let's keep these. They might be important. Nami scooped up a few of the glowing artifacts from around the dais. I'm not leaving. Empty-handed after all this. They quickly surveyed the chamber, finding a narrow passage leading away from the dais. With no other option, they followed it, Zoro taking the lead with a sword drawn, Luffy close behind with the chest tucked under his arm, and Nami bringing up the rear, her staff ready. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper beneath the island. Strange luminescent fungi growing on the walls provided just enough light to navigate by. After what felt like an eternity of walking, they detected a fresh breeze. There's an exit ahead, Zoro murmured. The tunnel widened into another chamber, smaller than the first but with a high ceiling that opened to the sky, a natural chimney to the surface. Sunlight streamed down, illuminating a pool of clear water that filled most of the space. At the far end, a narrow ledge led to what appeared to be a sea cave, with the sound of waves echoing from beyond. We can swim out through there, Nami pointed to the cave opening. I can't swim, Luffy reminded her, frowning at the water. We know, Zoro sighed. I'll drag you. Before they could formulate a plan, voices echoed down the tunnel behind them. In here somewhere. Spread out and find them. Marines. Nami gasped, recognizing the authoritative tone. How did they find us so quickly? Zoro positioned himself between his crewmates and the tunnel entrance. Luffy looked down at the chest in his hands, a sudden realization dawning. Maybe they were already looking for this. Maybe it's important. Whatever it is, we can't let them have it, Nami decided. We need to get back to the ship. The voices grew louder. There was no time left to debate. Into the water, Zoro ordered, sheathing his swords and tightening their ties. Nami, you go first and make sure the way is clear. I'll follow with this idiot. Nami nodded, tucking the artifacts she'd collected into her bag. She slipped into the pool and swam silently toward the cave opening. Luffy looked down at the chest, then at the approaching voices. Making a quick decision, he opened it again and stuffed both the gemstone and the map into his vest pocket before tossing the empty chest aside. What are you doing? Zoro hissed. Making it harder for them to know what we took, Luffy grinned. Come on. Just as the first Marines appeared at the tunnel entrance, Zoro grabbed Luffy and dove into the pool. The weight of the non-swimmer dragged them down quickly, but Zoro's powerful strokes propelled them toward the underwater cave opening where Nami had disappeared. The Marines shouted and fired a few shots that went wide, bubbles trailing through the water as the bullets lost momentum. Zoro and Luffy passed through the narrow cave opening and found themselves in a long tunnel that sloped gradually upward. Zoro's lungs burned as he kicked desperately, dragging his captain through the twisting passage. Just when his vision began to darken from lack of oxygen, they broke the surface into open air. They were in a small grotto that opened directly to the sea, well hidden among the rocky coastline of the island. Nami was already there, wringing water from her hair. "This way. I can see the Mary from here." They swam along the coastline, keeping close to the rocks to avoid being spotted from above. After several exhausting minutes, they rounded a bend and saw their ship anchored in deeper water. The tide had risen enough to free it from the sandbar. "Hey! Sanji! Usopp!" Luffy shouted the moment his head was above water. "Shut up, idiot!" Nami and Zoro hissed simultaneously. Too late. Their shouts had alerted not only their crewmates but also the marine vessel that had apparently arrived while they were underground, a sleek patrol ship anchored just beyond the reef. "There they are," came a shout from the marine ship. "Man the guns." Sanji and Usopp had already spotted them. The cook leapt into the water to help them while Usopp prepared the Mary for immediate departure. "What the hell happened?" Sanji demanded as he helped pull Nami aboard. "No time. We need to go now," she shouted back. The marine ship had begun to move, turning to cut off their escape. Cannon ports opened along its hull. "Usopp! Get us moving!" Zoro bellowed as he climbed the rope ladder. "Working on it." Usopp called from the helm, already adjusting the sails to catch the wind. Luffy, the last aboard, stood dripping on the deck with a huge grin. "That was close." "It's still close, you moron." Nami pointed at the approaching marine vessel. The Going Mary lurched forward as the wind filled her sails. They had the advantage of already being underway, but the marine ship was faster and better armed. "They're going to cut us off before we reach open water," Sanji observed grimly, lighting a fresh cigarette despite his wet clothes. Zoro unsheathed his swords. "Then we fight." "No." Nami interjected. "We need to use the current. There's a strong eastward flow just past that rock formation. If we can reach it, it'll carry us out faster than they can follow." "How do you know that?" Sanji asked, impressed. Nami simply tapped her head. Navigator's intuition. Usopp adjusted their course accordingly, aiming for the rocks that jutted from the sea like broken teeth. It would be dangerous navigation, but with Nami calling directions, they might make it. The Marines fired their first volley, cannonballs splashing into the water around the Mary. "They're warning shots," Zoro noted. "They want us to surrender." "As if." Luffy laughed, stretching his arms. "Gum Gum Rocket." He launched himself toward the marine ship, soaring through the air with a wild war cry. "Luffy," his crew shouted in exasperation. He landed on the marine ship's deck, immediately creating chaos. Marines scattered as the rubber man began throwing punches in every direction. Their attention diverted, the cannoneers ceased firing, giving the Mary precious time to navigate the treacherous rocks. "That idiot," Nami groaned. "He'll get himself killed one of these days." "Not today," Sanji remarked, pointing. "Look." Luffy had wrapped his stretchy limbs around the marine ship's mast and was using it like a giant slingshot, preparing to launch himself back to the Mary. With a twang of stretched rubber, he rocketed back, landing in a heap on their deck just as they cleared the rocks. "That was fun," he declared, jumping to his feet. The marine ship, attempting to follow, had to move more cautiously through the rock formation. Just as Nami had predicted, once they cleared the rocks, a strong current caught the Mary, accelerating them away from the island and their pursuers. "We did it!" Usopp cheered, doing a little dance by the helm. "Not quite," Nami pointed at the horizon where two more marine vessels had appeared. "They called for backup. Why are they so determined to catch us?" Sanji wondered. "Our bounties aren't that high yet." Luffy pulled the red gemstone from his pocket, holding it up to the sunlight. "Maybe it's because of this." The stone seemed to pulse in the light, the swirling patterns within it moving like living smoke. "What is that?" Usopp leaned closer, fascinated. "And what's that paper?" Sanji noticed the folded parchment poking from Luffy's vest. Nami snatched the map from Luffy's pocket and spread it on the deck, weighing down the corners with small objects. We found these in the ruins. They were hidden in an underground chamber that looked like it hadn't been disturbed for centuries. The crew gathered around, examining the strange markings. I can't make sense of any of this, Sanji admitted. What language is it? I don't know, Nami replied, tracing the lines with her finger. But these patterns, they remind me of something I studied about currents and magnetic fields. If I'm right, this could be a map to navigate parts of the Grand Line that are considered impassable. Zoro glanced at the pursuing marine ships, still falling behind but not giving up. That would certainly explain why they want it back. Luffy continued staring at the gemstone, oddly transfixed by the swirling patterns inside. Luffy? You okay? Usopp waved a hand in front of his captain's face. Luffy blinked, seeming to snap out of a trance. Yeah. Just thinking. That's new, Sanji snorted. The stone was with the map, Luffy explained, ignoring the jab. They were together in a chest surrounded by weird old stuff. It's gotta be important. Maybe it's a key of some kind. Nami suggested, reaching for the stone. As soon as her fingers touched it, she yanked her hand back with a gasp. It burned me. Luffy looked surprised. Really? It feels warm to me, but not hot. Zoro frowned. Let me try. He reached out, and like Nami, quickly withdrew his hand. It's scorching. One by one, each crew member attempted to hold the stone, and each found it too hot to touch, except for Luffy, who handled it as easily as any ordinary rock. That's just weird, Usopp declared. Why can only Luffy touch it? Before anyone could theorize, a cannonball splashed into the water nearby, sending spray across the deck. They're still coming. Nami pointed at the marine ships, which had adjusted their course to continue the pursuit. We need to lose them before nightfall, Sanji said, squinting at the afternoon sun. We can't outrun them forever. Luffy tucked the stone back into his pocket and climbed onto the Mary's figurehead, his favorite spot. Hey, Nami. Can you read any of the map? Does it show where we are now? Nami studied the parchment again. Maybe. There's a formation here that looks like the rocks we just passed. If I'm right, then this mark here. She pointed to a symbol near the center, might be where we currently are. And what's this big swirly thing next to it? Luffy stretched his neck to see. Nami's eyes widened. If I'm reading this correctly, it's a whirlpool. A massive one, just ahead of our current position. As if on cue, they felt the Mary's motion change, the ship beginning to move faster as the current strengthened. Everyone, secure everything. Nami ordered, rolling up the map. We're heading into rough water. The crew scrambled to tie down loose items and prepare the ship. Within minutes, they spotted it, a massive circular current ahead, water spinning with increasing velocity toward a central point. We'll be sucked in. Usopp cried, clinging to the mast. No, look at the map, Nami spread it out again quickly. The line we're on doesn't go into the whirlpool, it passes beside it. The current splits here. She pointed to a fork in the drawn line. If we stay to the left side of the current, we'll be carried safely past, but anyone following in our wake. We'll be pulled into the whirlpool, Zoro finished, a grim smile forming. Clever. Usopp, adjust our course 5 degrees to port, Nami instructed. Everyone else, shift weight to the port side to help the turn. The Mary groaned as they executed the maneuver, the ship fighting against the increasingly powerful current. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed they wouldn't make it, the whirlpool's edge was perilously close, the roar of churning water deafening. Then the ship lurched as it caught the smaller, diverging current, accelerating away from the maelstrom just as the pursuing marine vessels entered the danger zone. They're not adjusting course. Sanji called, watching through a spyglass. They don't have the map, Nami said softly. They don't know about the split. From the Mary's stern, they watched as the lead marine ship realized its peril too late. It attempted to turn, but the powerful current had already seized it, dragging it inexorably toward the center of the whirlpool. The second ship, seeing the danger, turned away in time but was now far behind them and quickly disappearing from view. We did it! Usopp cheered, dancing around the deck. But they'll still come after us, Zoro cautioned. They'll radio our position to other marine vessels. Luffy, still perched on the figurehead, turned to face his crew with an unusually serious expression. What exactly did we find? Why is everyone so worked up about an old rock and a piece of paper? Nami carefully refolded the map. I think what we found might be much more important than we realized. This map shows navigational secrets of the Grand Line that aren't on any modern charts. And that stone. She glanced at Luffy's pocket. I don't know what it is, but the fact that only you can touch it has to mean something. Sanji leaned against the railing, lighting a fresh cigarette. So what now, Captain? We've got the Marines on our tail and some mysterious artifacts they desperately want back. Luffy pulled out the gemstone again, watching the swirls inside it catch the fading sunlight. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought, uncharacteristically quiet. Luffy? Usopp prompted. Finally, Luffy grinned, his familiar carefree expression returning. We keep going, of course. This is an adventure now. As the sun began to set, they sailed on, the Mary carried by the strange current marked on their ancient map. None of them could have guessed how their lives would change because of what they'd found, or that the real significance of their discovery was still to be revealed. The night passed relatively peacefully. They took turns on watch, but no more marine vessels appeared on their horizon. By morning, they had left the mysterious island far behind, though Nami ensured she marked its location on her charts. I've never seen currents behave that way, she remarked over breakfast, studying both her own maps and the ancient parchment. It's like there are secret pathways through the Grand Line that only this map shows. That would be valuable to anyone navigating these waters, Sanji noted as he served fresh coffee. Usopp, who had been tinkering with a small project, looked up. I've been thinking, what if that stone isn't just a fancy rock? What if it's some kind of key or tool? Luffy pulled it from his pocket. In the morning light, the swirls within seemed more active, almost pulsing. It feels weird. Like it's alive or something. Let me see it again, Nami requested, her curiosity overcoming her caution. Luffy handed it to her, and this time, she was able to hold it briefly before dropping it with a wince. It's still hot, but not as bad as yesterday. Maybe it's getting used to us. Usopp suggested. Zoro, who had been quietly maintaining his swords, spoke up. Or maybe it responds to specific people. It might recognize something in Luffy. They all looked at their captain, who picked his nose absent-mindedly while staring at the stone. Him. Special? Sanji snorted. He's just a rubber idiot. Hey! Luffy protested. But he is the only one who can hold it comfortably, Nami pointed out. Further discussion was interrupted by Usopp's shout from the crow's nest. Ship approaching. Coming in fast from the east. Everyone tensed, expecting another marine vessel. Instead, through the spyglass, they saw a pirate flag, a skull with what appeared to be a vulture's wings spreading behind it. Pirates, Zoro stated, hand moving to his swords. Probably after the same thing the Marines want. How would they know about it? Sanji wondered. Nami grimaced. News travels fast on the Grand Line. If these artifacts are as important as the Marines seem to think, other pirates would definitely be interested. The approaching ship was larger than the Mary, a three-masted vessel with black sails and a reinforced hull. It moved swiftly, clearly intending to intercept them. They're faster, Nami observed grimly. We can't outrun them. Luffy cracked his knuckles, grinning widely. Then we fight. We don't know how many they are or how strong, Zoro cautioned, though he was already tying his bandana around his head, a sure sign he was preparing for battle. The pirate ship closed the distance quickly. As it drew alongside the Mary, they could see its crew lining the rails, at least 30 men, all armed and looking eager for confrontation. Standing at the foremost point was a tall, lean man with a shock of red hair and a coat made from what appeared to be feathers. A massive curved sword hung at his hip, and a cruel smile played on his lips. "Well, well," he called across the water. "If it isn't the infamous Straw Hat crew. Quite the prize you've stumbled upon, from what I hear." "Who are you?" Luffy demanded, standing firmly on the Mary's deck. The man gave an exaggerated bow. "Captain Vero, the Vulture, at your service. Perhaps you've heard of me?" None of the Straw Hats reacted to the name. Vero's smile faltered slightly. "No. Well, you will soon enough. I'll be known as the man who took the One Piece from right under Straw Hat Luffy's nose." Luffy's eyes widened. "The One Piece? What are you talking about?" Vero laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Playing dumb won't help you, boy. The word is out, you found it on that uncharted island. The greatest treasure in the world, the One Piece itself. And now I've come to take it from you." The Straw Hat crew exchanged confused glances. "We didn't find the One Piece," Nami called back. "Just some old artifacts." "Lies." Vero spat. "Our sources confirmed it, the legendary treasure of Gold Roger, hidden for decades until you stumbled upon it by sheer dumb luck. Now hand it over, and I might let you live." Luffy looked down at the red gemstone in his hand, then at the map Nami held. "Could these really be?" "Even if we did have it," Zoro spoke up, drawing one sword partially from its sheath, "what makes you think we'd just hand it over?" Vero's smile returned, more sinister than before. "Because you're outnumbered, outgunned, and—" He raised a hand, and several of his men brought forward a familiar figure, bound and gagged, outmaneuvered. "Usopp," the Straw Hats gasped in unison. Their sharpshooter had been on watch in the crow's nest, but now he knelt on Vero's deck, eyes wide with terror above the gag in his mouth. One of the pirates held a knife to his throat. "When did they?" Sanji started. "They must have snuck aboard while we were distracted," Zoro growled. Luffy's face darkened, his usual carefree expression replaced by cold anger. "Let him go." "Oh, I will," Vero assured him. "Just as soon as you hand over the One Piece. You have 10 seconds to decide before my man here starts carving your friend into little pieces." The Straw Hats' minds raced, seeking a solution. They couldn't give up what they didn't have, and even if the artifacts they'd found were somehow related to the One Piece, they certainly weren't going to hand them over to this vulture. 10. Vero began counting. Nami whispered urgently, "What do we do? We can't let them hurt Usopp." 9. "Luffy," Zoro muttered, "I can create a distraction. You grab Usopp." 8. "Too risky," Sanji shook his head. "That blade is too close to his throat." 7. Luffy stared at the gemstone in his palm, the swirls inside moving faster now, almost agitated. Something stirred in his memory, a story Shanks had told him years ago about the Pirate King's treasure. 6. "I'm going to try something," Luffy whispered to his crew. "Be ready." 5. "What are you?" Nami began, but Luffy had already stepped forward. 4. "Hey, bird coat!" Luffy shouted, interrupting the count. "You want the One Piece? Fine. But first, tell your man to move that knife away from my friend." Vero paused, considering. "You'll hand it over?" "I'll show it to you," Luffy replied carefully. "Then we negotiate." After a moment's hesitation, Vero nodded to his crewman, who lowered the knife slightly from Usopp's throat. Luffy held up the red gemstone. "You think this is the One Piece?" Vero's eyes narrowed. Where's the rest of it? The Marines reported a chest. This is it, Luffy insisted. Just this stone and a map. That's what we found. You lie. Vero spat. The One Piece is the greatest treasure in the world. Not some paltry trinket. Luffy shrugged. Maybe the stories were exaggerated. Or maybe. He squeezed the stone in his fist. Maybe you don't understand what makes something valuable. As if responding to his words, the gemstone began to glow, the light seeping between Luffy's fingers. The swirls within it accelerated, and suddenly, a beam of intense red light shot from his closed fist toward Vero's ship. Everyone froze in shock as the light touched the pirate vessel's deck, and passed through it like it wasn't there, continuing downward. A moment later, the sea beneath Vero's ship began to churn violently. What's happening? Vero shouted, his confidence crumbling as his ship began to rock violently. The water around the pirate vessel swirled faster, forming a localized whirlpool that hadn't been there moments before. The ship tilted precariously, its crew scrambling for handholds. In the confusion, Usopp saw his chance. He rolled away from his distracted captor and, despite his bound hands, managed to leap overboard toward the Mary. Usopp. Sanji dove into the water after him. The whirlpool intensified, Vero's ship now spinning helplessly in its grasp. The pirates fired a few desperate shots toward the Mary, but their aim was wild, the bullets splashing harmlessly into the sea. Sanji surfaced with Usopp, and Zoro helped haul them both aboard the Mary. Nami was already at the helm, turning their ship away from the supernatural maelstrom. "Get us out of here," she shouted. As they pulled away, they heard Vero's enraged scream, "This isn't over, Straw Hat. I'll find you again." Luffy stood at the stern, watching as the pirate ship was dragged inexorably downward by the whirlpool, until finally, with a tremendous crack of breaking timbers, it was pulled beneath the waves. The gemstone in his hand had stopped glowing, the swirls within now moving lazily once more. Luffy stared at it in amazement. What just happened? Usopp gasped once Sanji had removed his gag. "I have no idea," Luffy admitted. "I just felt like the stone wanted to do something. And then it did." Nami approached cautiously. "Luffy, if that stone can create whirlpools out of nowhere, then it's definitely not just a pretty rock," Zoro finished. Sanji cut the ropes binding Usopp's wrists. "And if Vero thought these artifacts are the One Piece, then others will too," Nami concluded grimly. Luffy looked from the stone to his crew, his expression unusually serious. "Vero said the word is out. If people think we've found the One Piece, every pirate and marine in the Grand Line will be hunting us." "But it can't be the actual One Piece," Usopp protested as he rubbed his chafed wrists. "It's just a stone and a map. The One Piece is supposed to be the greatest treasure in the world." "Maybe it is," Luffy said softly, staring at the gemstone. "Just not in the way everyone thinks." They sailed on through the day, keeping a vigilant watch for more pursuers. Usopp related how he'd been quietly taken from the crow's nest by a small stealth boat that approached from the Mary's blind spot, a humiliating experience he vowed would never happen again. As night fell, they gathered in the galley to discuss their situation. The map and gemstone lay in the center of the table, illuminated by the swinging lantern overhead. "We need to figure out what these actually are," Nami began, tracing the strange symbols on the map. "If they're valuable enough for the Marines and pirates like Vero to hunt us, we need to understand why. And how the stone created that whirlpool," Sanji added. "That was no ordinary power." Zoro, arms crossed, leaned against the wall. "It responds to Luffy specifically. That has to mean something." All eyes turned to their captain, who was uncharacteristically quiet, staring at the artifacts with an intensity they rarely saw from him. "Luffy?" Nami prompted. "What are you thinking?" He looked up, his eyes clearer and more focused than usual. "I'm thinking about what Shanks told me once about the One Piece. He said Gold Roger laughed when people asked what it was, that it wasn't what anyone expected. And Usopp leaned forward eagerly. What if it's not gold or jewels? What if it's knowledge? Power? Something that could change everything? Luffy picked up the gemstone, watching the swirls dance within. This stone did something impossible today. The map shows paths no one else knows. Maybe that's part of what makes the One Piece so special. His crew stared at him in shock. This level of insight was unusual for their typically straightforward captain. That's actually a really good point, Nami admitted. The true value of the One Piece has always been speculated about. No one knows for sure what it is. So what do we do now? Sanji asked, lighting a cigarette. Half the Grand Line thinks we have the greatest treasure in the world. And they'll all be coming for us, Zoro added grimly. Luffy tucked the gemstone back into his pocket and grinned, his serious moment passing. We keep going. This is just making our adventure more exciting. We could die. Usopp protested. We were always going to be hunted eventually, Luffy shrugged. Now we just have a head start on being famous. Despite the danger, his enthusiasm was infectious. Even Usopp couldn't help but smile a little. We should try to learn more about these artifacts, Nami suggested practically. There must be scholars or historians who could tell us what they are. Without giving them away, Zoro cautioned. Of course, she agreed. We'll be careful. Their planning session was interrupted by a tremendous boom that shook the entire ship. They rushed out onto the deck to find the night sky illuminated by signal flares, and surrounded by marine vessels. They found us, Sanji stated unnecessarily, counting at least 5 ships encircling them at a distance. A voice boomed across the water from a loudspeaker, "Attention Straw Hat Pirates. This is Marine Captain Moreland. You are surrounded. Surrender the artifacts you stole from the uncharted island and prepare to be boarded." Zoro drew his swords. Like hell. There are too many of them, Nami whispered, fear evident in her voice. We can't fight our way out of this. Luffy stepped forward, standing tall on the Mary's deck. He pulled the gemstone from his pocket, and to everyone's surprise, it was glowing again, pulsing like a heartbeat. It's reacting to something, Usopp observed nervously. Or warning us, Zoro suggested. The marine ships began to close in, their spotlights focusing on the Mary. Armed soldiers lined their railings, weapons trained on the small pirate vessel. Last warning, came the announcement. Surrender now or we open fire. Luffy held up the gemstone, which now glowed brilliantly in the darkness. I don't think we need to fight, he said calmly. What are you? Nami began. The map, Luffy cut her off. It showed currents under the ocean, right? Paths no one else can see. Nami nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You think the stone can control those currents? It made a whirlpool appear out of nowhere, Luffy reminded her. I'm betting it can do more than that. Before anyone could stop him, Luffy raised the stone higher and shouted across the water, "Hey, Marines. You want this? Come and get it." The gemstone's glow intensified until it was painful to look at directly. The sea around the Mary began to stir, small waves forming in circular patterns. Open fire, came the panicked order from the Marine commander. But before a single shot could be fired, the water between the ships erupted. Not in explosions from cannonballs, but in massive, churning columns that rose like liquid pillars toward the night sky. The marine ships rocked violently as the sea itself seemed to rebel against them. Water spouts formed around the Mary in a protective circle, creating an impenetrable barrier. What's happening? Usopp cried over the roar of water and wind. Luffy's face was illuminated by the gemstone's red glow, his expression a mixture of concentration and wonder. I'm not sure. I just asked it to help us. The Mary began to move, caught in a current that hadn't existed moments before. But unlike the marine ships, which were being tossed about helplessly, their vessel moved with purpose, gliding smoothly through a channel in the chaos. Within minutes, they had passed beyond the ring of marine ships, carried by the mysterious current. Behind them, the water spouts dissipated, leaving the marines disoriented and far behind. As the gemstone's glow faded, Luffy sank to his knees on the deck, suddenly exhausted. "That took a lot out of me," he panted. His crew gathered around him, expressions mixing concern with awe. "Luffy," Nami said softly, staring at the now dormant stone in his hand. I think we might really have found part of the One Piece." The implications hung heavy in the air as the Mary sailed on through the night, carried by currents that no chart had ever recorded, except for the ancient map they now possessed. Dawn found them far from where they'd encountered the Marines, the Going Merry drifting in calm seas with no land or ships in sight. Luffy had slept soundly after his exhausting display of power, but now he sat cross-legged on the figurehead, staring thoughtfully at the horizon. Nami approached, offering him a mug of coffee. "How are you feeling?" "Hungry," he replied predictably, accepting the drink. She smiled, leaning against the railing beside him. "Besides that?" Luffy shrugged. "Weird. Like I did something big yesterday, but I don't really understand what." "None of us do," she admitted. "But what you did with that stone. Luffy, that was incredible. And terrifying." He pulled the gemstone from his pocket. In the morning light, it looked almost ordinary, just a red rock with strange patterns inside. "It feels right in my hand. Like it belongs there. Remember what Vero said? That the word is out about us finding the One Piece." Nami's expression grew serious. "After what happened with the Marines last night, that news will spread even faster. Everyone will be looking for us now." Luffy grinned. "Good. That means we're famous." "It means we're in danger," she corrected, though she couldn't help smiling at his enthusiasm. "But you're right about one thing, there's no going back now. Whatever these artifacts are, whatever power they contain, they're part of our journey now." The rest of the crew had gathered on deck, each processing the events of the previous day in their own way. Zoro trained with his weights, more intensely than usual. Sanji prepared breakfast, his cigarette burning faster than normal, betraying his tension. Usopp tinkered with his slingshot, muttering about needing stronger ammunition. "So what's our plan, Captain?" Sanji called as he set platters of food on the deck table. Luffy hopped down from the figurehead, his familiar hungry grin returning. "First, breakfast. Then." He looked at the map Nami had spread out. "We follow that." The ancient parchment lay weighted down on the table, its strange markings catching the morning light. Nami had been studying it all morning, comparing it to her own charts. "I think I'm starting to understand some of it," she explained as they ate. "These lines aren't just currents, they're connections between specific points. Islands, maybe, or..." She hesitated. "Or what?" Zoro prompted. "Places of power," she finished. "Points where the world's energy converges. There are legends about such places in the Grand Line, islands that appear and disappear, currents that flow against nature, weather that changes in the blink of an eye. Like the island where we found these things," Usopp noted, gesturing with his fork. Nami nodded. "Exactly. And look here." She pointed to a symbol near the center of the map. "This marking is different from the others. It's larger, more elaborate. What do you think it means?" Sanji leaned closer. "If I'm reading this correctly, it's a final destination. The place where all these lines converge." Nami looked up, her eyes meeting Luffy's. "Maybe the true resting place of the One Piece." A hush fell over the crew. The implications were staggering. "You think these artifacts are like a key?" Usopp suggested. "A way to find the real treasure?" "It would explain why they were hidden so carefully," Zoro remarked. And why both the Marines and other pirates want them so badly. Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood up. It doesn't matter. What? His crew asked in unison. It doesn't matter if these things lead to the One Piece or if they are part of it or whatever. His voice was firm, his eyes clear with resolve. They're ours now. We found them. And whatever adventure they bring us, we'll face it together. His simple declaration lifted the tension that had been building. This was Luffy at his most basic and most inspiring, straightforward, determined, unafraid. Where to next, navigator? He asked Nami with a grin. She studied the map again. According to this, there's another convergence point not far from our current position. It might be an island, or it might be something else entirely. Then that's where we're headed. Luffy declared, punching the air. As they cleared away breakfast and prepared the ship to follow Nami's directions, none of them noticed the lone gull circling high above, or the small camera strapped to its leg, transmitting their images to somewhere far away. In a darkened room filled with monitoring equipment, a figure watched the footage with interest. The Going Merry, sailing peacefully below, was clearly visible. But more importantly, so was the red gemstone that Luffy now wore on a string around his neck. So the rumors are true, the watcher murmured. The boy found it. After all these years. A Den Mushi sat nearby, ready to transmit. The watcher hesitated, then reached for it. Connect me to headquarters, they instructed the snail. After a moment, they continued, this is Agent 7-3. I have confirmation. Straw Hat Luffy has the Crimson Tide. Yes, and the chart of currents as well. No, they don't appear to understand its full significance yet, but the stone has bonded with him already. Yes. I'll continue surveillance. The transmission ended. The watcher returned their attention to the monitors, where the Going Merry was growing smaller as it sailed toward its next destination, and toward a fate none of its crew could possibly imagine. Little did they know, their discovery had set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of the world. Chapter 2, The Burden of Knowledge. 1 month. That's how long we've been running. Get down. Nami hissed, yanking Luffy behind a stack of crates as a marine patrol marched past the alleyway. We'd docked at a small trading outpost to resupply, and already our time was running out. Luffy fidgeted beside me, clearly itching to stretch his legs, literally and figuratively. The past month had changed us all, but maybe him most of all. His eyes constantly darted to the stone hanging from his neck, now wrapped in a simple leather cord that Usopp had crafted. The red glow had dimmed since that night we escaped the marine fleet, but I'd catch it pulsing occasionally, especially when danger lurked nearby. They're gone, I whispered, peering around the corner. But we need to hurry. Sanji and Chopper should be finished shopping by now. Yeah, Chopper, our newest crew member. We'd found him when we took shelter at Drum Island after a particularly nasty storm. A reindeer with a blue nose and human intelligence thanks to a devil fruit. He'd joined us after Luffy helped overthrow the tyrannical King Wapol. Even in hiding, my captain couldn't help but get involved in other people's problems. These disguises suck, Luffy complained, tugging at the hooded cloak that concealed his trademark straw hat. I can barely see anything. That's the point, dummy, I replied, checking that my own hood still covered my orange hair. Your face is plastered on wanted posters across the entire Grand Line. The bounty on Luffy's head had skyrocketed after word spread about our discovery. 300 million beri, a figure that made even veteran pirates pause. The rest of us hadn't been spared either. The crew that found the One Piece, they called us, though we still weren't convinced that's what we had. We slipped through the crowded marketplace, keeping our heads down. The Going Merry was docked at the far harbor, away from the main shipping lanes. We'd learned to be careful about where and how we made port. Nami. Luffy's voice had that rare serious tone that always made me pay attention. I'm tired of running. I glanced at him sharply. What are you saying? I'm saying, he paused as another patrol passed by. I'm saying this isn't freedom. And being Pirate King is about being the freest person on the sea. I couldn't argue with that logic, simple as it was. That's Luffy for you, cutting straight to the heart of things while the rest of us overthink. We reached the rendezvous point where Zoro waited, looking thoroughly annoyed at having to stay put. His distinctive green hair was tucked under a cap, but nothing could disguise the 3 swords at his hip. Any sign of the others? I asked. He grunted. Usopp signaled from the rooftops. Marines are checking ships at the main harbor. We need to move. My heart sank. They found us again. How? None of us had an answer to that. Somehow, wherever we went, the Marines seemed one step behind, or worse, one step ahead. Let's go, Luffy decided, already moving toward the back streets that would take us to the Mary. We slipped through narrow alleys, avoiding the main thoroughfares. This had become routine for us, hiding, sneaking, running. Not at all the grand adventure Luffy had promised when I joined his crew. Hey, Zoro nudged me, noticing my downcast expression. We've been in worse spots. Have we though? I challenged. The entire world government is hunting us, Zoro. Not just some local marines or a warlord with a grudge. Everyone. Not everyone, Luffy corrected without turning around. Shanks isn't hunting us. And Ace sent a message saying the Whitebeard pirates are staying out of it too. Small comfort, but I appreciated his attempt. That was another change in Luffy, he'd become more aware of his crew's moods, more attentive to our fears and doubts. He still charged headlong into danger, but now he at least acknowledged the risks. We reached the docks without incident, slipping through the maze of fishing boats and trading vessels. The Mary was right where we'd left her, with Sanji standing watch on the deck, cigarette smoke curling up from beneath his own disguise. About time, he called quietly as we approached. Chopper and Usopp are already aboard. Got everything we need, but we should leave immediately. Where's Robin? Luffy asked, looking around for our newest addition, a mysterious woman who'd approached us 2 weeks ago, claiming to be an archaeologist interested in the artifacts we'd found. I still didn't fully trust her, but Luffy had accepted her onto the crew with his usual impulsiveness. She kept to herself mostly, spending hours studying the ancient map and asking questions about the stone. She went to check something at the bookstore, Sanji replied. Said she'd be back before departure. Luffy frowned. We can't wait. Marines are searching ships. As if summoned by his words, Robin appeared on the dock behind us, moving with her characteristic grace. No need to wait, Captain. I've acquired what we needed. She held up a book bound in faded leather, its pages yellowed with age. What's that? I asked. A treatise on ancient navigation techniques, she replied with her enigmatic smile. I believe it may help us decipher more of the chart of currents. That's what she'd taken to calling our mysterious map, and the name had stuck. The Crimson Tide was her name for Luffy's stone, which seemed fitting given how it controlled the waters. We boarded quickly, each moving to our positions with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the Mary was gliding away from the harbor, riding a current that only we could navigate thanks to our unique chart. They're moving. A shout from the docks behind us. That's them. The Straw Hat Pirates. Faster, Luffy ordered, and I adjusted our heading as Zoro and Sanji unfurled more sail. Marine whistles pierced the air, followed by the thunder of boots on wood as they rushed to intercept us. Too late, we were already reaching deeper water, where the Crimson Tide's power truly shined. Luffy took his position at the figurehead, the stone now glowing visibly beneath his shirt. This had become our escape routine. Once in open water, Luffy would somehow commune with the stone, guiding us into currents that no other ship could navigate or even detect. Ready? He called back to me. I checked the chart of currents, aligning it with my regular maps. Bearing south-southeast. The hidden current should be just ahead. Luffy closed his eyes, one hand gripping the stone. Its red glow intensified, casting his face in crimson light. The sea around us shifted subtly, the wave patterns changing as if responding to an unseen command. The Mary lurched forward, catching the invisible current. Behind us, marine ships were scrambling to follow, but I knew they'd lose us within minutes. They always did. "We're clear," Usopp called from the crow's nest after 20 minutes of swift sailing. No pursuit visible. A collective sigh of relief passed through the crew. Another narrow escape. Robin approached me at the navigation table, where I was plotting our next move. "That was closer than usual," she observed. "The Marines appear to be refining their tactics." I nodded grimly. "They learn a little more each time. Eventually, even the hidden currents won't be enough. Then perhaps it's time we learn more as well." She placed the book she'd acquired on the table. "About what we truly possess." The crew gathered in the galley that evening, the map and stone placed carefully at the center of the table. Robin had spent the afternoon comparing the ancient text with the symbols on our map, occasionally making notes in her precise handwriting. "I believe I've made some progress," she announced as Sanji served a hot meal. "The chart of currents is indeed what we suspected, a map of hidden pathways through the Grand Line. But it's more than that." She traced one of the major lines on the parchment. "These aren't just ocean currents. They're what ancient mariners called ley lines, channels of energy that flow through the world." "Energy?" Chopper asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Like electricity?" Robin smiled at our doctor. "More fundamental than that. The energy that shapes weather patterns, that moves tectonic plates, that perhaps even influences the tides of history itself." "That sounds like mystical nonsense," Zoro grunted, though I noticed he was paying close attention. "Many things in the Grand Line seem like nonsense until you experience them firsthand," Robin countered smoothly. "Consider the stone, the Crimson Tide. We've all witnessed its power to control water, create whirlpools, and guide us through invisible currents. Is it so hard to believe there's a greater pattern behind such abilities?" Luffy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "The stone talks to me sometimes." We all turned to stare at him. "What do you mean, talks?" I asked carefully. He shrugged, picking at his food. "Not with words exactly. More like feelings. Images. When I hold it, especially when we're in danger, it shows me things. Where to go. What to do." Robin leaned forward, intensely interested. "What kind of images, Captain?" "Islands I've never seen. People I don't recognize." He looked up, his eyes troubled. "And sometimes, a giant empty throne." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken questions. Robin was the first to recover. "The empty throne," she whispered. "So it's true." "What's true?" Sanji asked. "What do you know about this?" Robin hesitated, something I'd rarely seen her do. "I have studied certain forbidden histories. There are legends about an empty throne that represents the true power behind the world government. If the stone is showing such images to Luffy, then what we possess is far more significant than we realized." "You mean dangerous," I corrected. She nodded solemnly. "Extraordinarily so." Usopp raised his hand nervously. Maybe this is a good time to mention that our bounties went up again. I saw the new posters in town." "How bad?" Zoro asked. "Luffy's now at 400 million. The rest of us between 50 and 120 million each." Usopp swallowed hard. "And they're not just calling for our capture anymore. The posters say, 'Dead or alive,' now." "They're getting desperate," Robin murmured. "They fear what might happen if the truth spreads." "What truth?" Luffy demanded, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You know something, Robin. Tell us." She met his gaze steadily. The truth about the Void Century. The 100 years of history that the world government has erased from all records. I believe the artifacts we found are connected to that missing history, perhaps even key to understanding it. And why would that matter so much? Sanji asked. Because, Robin said quietly, the truth of that century would likely reveal that the world government's founding was built on blood and lies. Enough to topple their authority if widely known. Luffy stood abruptly. I don't care about any of that. Politics, history, governments, they can all sort themselves out. I just want my crew to be safe and free to follow our dreams. But that's just it, Captain, Robin replied. Your freedom and the truth are now intertwined. The world government won't rest until they've recovered these artifacts and silenced anyone who knows about them. The crimson tide pulsed at Luffy's chest, as if responding to the tension in the room. He clutched it reflexively. Then we'll just have to become strong enough that they can't catch us, he declared with his characteristic simplicity. Or strong enough to fight back if they do. No one argued with that. Impossible as it seemed, if anyone could defy the entire world, it would be Monkey D. Luffy. The meeting broke up shortly after, each of us retreating to process what we'd learned. I stayed at the navigation table, comparing our charts with the course Robin had helped me plot based on the ancient map. You don't trust me. I jumped at Robin's voice. She had approached silently, a skill that still unnerved me. I trust that Luffy trusts you, I replied carefully. That's enough for now. She smiled faintly. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I believe your captain may be the most important person in the world right now. Because of the stone. Because of who he is. Robin's gaze drifted to where Luffy sat on the figurehead, staring out at the darkening horizon. The stone chose him, not the other way around. There's a reason for that. I wanted to press her further, but a shout from the crow's nest interrupted us. Ship approaching. Fast. Usopp called down, his voice tight with alarm. It's a marine battleship. We rushed to the deck. Sure enough, a massive warship was bearing down on us from the northwest, moving with impossible speed for a vessel of its size. How did they find us so quickly? Sanji muttered, lighting a fresh cigarette. More importantly, how are they moving so fast? Zoro added, hand on his swords. They shouldn't be able to follow us through the hidden current. Robin's expression darkened. That's not just any battleship. That's the flag vessel of Marine Admiral Akiji. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the evening air. The admirals were the most powerful fighters in the Marines, monsters in human form, each with the strength to decimate entire pirate fleets single-handedly. Can we outrun them? Chopper asked fearfully. I checked our heading and the wind. Not with this breeze. They'll intercept us within the hour. Luffy jumped down from the figurehead, his face set in determined lines. Then we fight. Are you insane? Usopp squeaked. That's an admiral. We can't beat someone that powerful. We don't need to beat him, Luffy replied. We just need to escape. And for that, we need to slow him down. The stone at his chest pulsed brighter, and the sea around the Mary began to churn. But something was different this time, the water seemed to resist, waves fighting against each other in conflicting patterns. Luffy frowned, concentrating harder. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Something's wrong. The currents, they're not responding right. Robin moved to the railing, staring intently at the approaching battleship. Ice Age, she whispered. Akiji's power. He can freeze the ocean itself. As if confirming her words, we watched in horror as patches of the sea around us began to crystallize, ice spreading across the water's surface like white fingers reaching for our ship. He's neutralizing the Crimson Tide's power, Robin explained tensely. Freezing the currents before they can form. Luffy growled in frustration, the stone now blazing bright enough to cast shadows. The battle of wills continued, ice versus current, freezing against flowing, while the marine battleship drew ever closer. "This isn't working," Luffy finally admitted, his breath coming in short gasps from the effort. "We need a different plan." "We could try to slip away in the Mini Mary," Usopp suggested, referring to the small auxiliary boat Frankie had crafted during a brief stop at Water 7. "Split up temporarily. They'd just hunt us down individually," Zoro countered. "Not if they don't know which of us has the artifacts," Sanji pointed out. "We could create decoys." Luffy's eyes lit up. "Good idea. Nami, prepare 3 boats. We'll split into groups and rendezvous. Where's a safe place?" "Water 7, I suggested. It's large enough to hide in, with enough shipwrights that we could potentially repair any damage we sustain. And Frankie said he'd help us if we needed it. 3 days from here, if we can shake Akiji," Robin added, consulting the chart. Luffy nodded decisively. "Nami, Usopp, and Chopper in 1 boat. Zoro and Sanji in another. Robin and I will take the 3rd. "Wait," I protested. "You should keep Zoro with you for protection." "No," Luffy cut me off. "If Akiji is tracking the Crimson Tide, then I need to lead him away from the rest of you. Robin knows the most about these artifacts, so she comes with me." His logic was sound, but I didn't like it. Separating the crew was dangerous, especially with someone as powerful as an admiral on our tail. "We don't have time to argue," Zoro said, noting the approaching battleship. "Those are our orders. Let's move." We scrambled to prepare the small boats, loading each with basic supplies and navigation equipment. I made quick copies of our route to Water 7, distributing 1 to each group. "If we're not all there in 3 days, Luffy instructed as we prepared to launch, wait 1 more day, then continue without the missing group." "Don't say that," Chopper pleaded, tears in his big eyes. "We'll all make it." Luffy ruffled the reindeer's fur affectionately. "Of course we will. But just in case." The marine ship was close enough now that we could see figures moving on its deck. A tall silhouette stood at the prow, unmistakably Akiji himself, his long frame unmistakable even at this distance. "Now!" Luffy ordered. We launched the 3 small craft simultaneously, each heading in a different direction. The Mini Mary remained with the Going Mary as a decoy, while our rowboats slipped away under cover of gathering darkness. I glanced back as our boat, carrying myself, Usopp, and Chopper, pulled away from the Mary. Luffy stood in his own boat with Robin, the Crimson Tide glowing like a small sun against his chest. He raised one hand in farewell, that confident grin still on his face despite everything. Then the sea between us erupted. A massive wave of freezing air swept across the water, instantly crystallizing everything it touched. Our small boat rocked violently as ice formed mere feet away. "Row!" I screamed, and Usopp responded with panicked energy, his skinny arms working the oars with desperate strength. Through the chaos, I glimpsed Zoro and Sanji's boat veering sharply to avoid another ice blast. Luffy and Robin were already disappearing into the gathering mist, the glow of the Crimson Tide like a retreating star. "Straw Hat Luffy," a deep voice boomed across the water, Akiji's voice, calm despite the destruction he was causing. "Surrender the artifacts. You don't understand what forces you're playing with. Come and take them." Luffy's distant reply carried on the wind, followed by his distinctive laugh. The marine battleship changed course, pursuing the fading red light. I watched, heart in my throat, as ice continued to spread across the sea behind us. Akiji had taken Luffy's bait, focusing on him rather than the rest of us. "Will they be okay?" Chopper whimpered as we rowed steadily away. I tried to sound more confident than I felt. "It's Luffy. And Robin's no pushover either. Besides," Usopp added, his voice shaking slightly, "Luffy's got that stone thing. He can control the sea." But as we watched the distant confrontation, an enormous pillar of ice rose from the ocean, reaching toward the night sky like a frozen tower. Lightning flashed around its peak, not natural lightning, but the discharge of tremendous energy. "What's happening?" Chopper gasped. I shook my head wordlessly. Whatever battle was taking place between Luffy and Akiji was beyond anything we'd witnessed before. "Keep rowing," I finally managed. "We have our orders." With heavy hearts, we turned away from the spectacle and continued our journey toward Water 7, each of us silently praying for our captain's safety. The next 3 days were some of the longest of my life. Our small boat wasn't designed for extended journeys, making progress slow and uncomfortable. We took turns rowing, navigating, and keeping watch. Chopper's sensitive nose warned us when marine ships came too close, allowing us to hide among small islands or fishing vessels. News traveled fast across the Grand Line. At every port where we cautiously stopped for supplies, rumors swirled about the Battle of Gods that had supposedly taken place between Straw Hat Luffy and Admiral Akiji. Some claimed Luffy had been captured, others that he had defeated the Admiral with some mysterious power. No one seemed to know the truth. "They're just stories," I reassured Chopper and Usopp, though my own worry grew with each passing hour. People always exaggerate. On the afternoon of the third day, we finally spotted the distinctive skyline of Water 7 on the horizon, the city of canals, rising from the sea like a multi-tiered fountain. We approached cautiously, using back channels to avoid the main harbor where marine ships would likely be watching. "We should contact Frankie first," Usopp suggested as we navigated the narrow waterways of the lower city. "He can hide us until the others arrive." I nodded agreement. The shipwright had been friendly during our brief previous visit, when we'd commissioned the Mini Mary. More importantly, he had no love for the world government and plenty of hiding places in the city's underbelly. We found our way to Frankie House, the headquarters of his family of dismantlers and shipwrights. The massive, gaudy building stood out even in Water 7's eclectic architecture. "Who's there?" a gruff voice challenged as we approached the door. "Friends of Frankie," I called back. "The Straw Hat Pirates." There was a pause, then the door cracked open. A square-faced man with sunglasses peered out suspiciously. "The Straw Hats. You guys are bad news right now. Marines are crawling all over the city looking for you." "Please," Chopper stepped forward, in his most adorable form. "We need help. Our friends might be in trouble." The man's stern expression softened slightly. "Damn it. Come in, quickly. Boss will want to see you." Inside, we found Frankie lounging on a gaudy sofa, surrounded by his eccentric family members. The blue-haired cyborg jumped up when he saw us, his massive forearms thrown wide. "If it isn't the Super Navigator and her friends," he boomed, striking his signature pose. "Where's the rest of your crew? And my beautiful Mini Mary?" We quickly explained our situation. Frankie's expression grew serious as we described the confrontation with Akiji and our planned rendezvous. "That's not good," he said when we finished. "There are rumors that a major marine operation went down 3 days ago. Ice mountains appearing from nowhere, weird red lights in the sky." My heart sank. "Any word on survivors?" Frankie shook his head. "Nothing specific. But the Marines have been acting weird, lots of coded transmissions, high-ranking officers coming and going. Something big happened, that's for sure. We need to find a safe place to wait for the others," Usopp urged. "Somewhere the Marines won't look." Frankie grinned, his massive teeth gleaming. "Say no more. I've got just the place. The world government and I aren't exactly on friendly terms either, you know." He led us through a hidden passage beneath Frankie House, which opened into an extensive network of underground rooms and tunnels. "My own personal hideout," he explained proudly. "Built it myself after some trouble a few years back. The Marines don't know about it." We settled in to wait, Frankie providing food and clean clothes. As the hours passed, my anxiety grew. What if the others didn't make it? What if Luffy had been captured, or worse? Just before midnight, a commotion above brought us all to our feet. Frankie went to investigate, returning minutes later with two familiar figures, Zoro and Sanji, looking battered but very much alive. "You made it!" Chopper cried, launching himself at them in a tearful hug. Sanji grinned through a split lip. "Takes more than a few marine patrols to stop us." Zoro looked around, his expression darkening. "Where's Luffy? And Robin?" My heart sank. "They're not with you." "We haven't seen them." The swordsman and cook exchanged grim looks. "What happened?" I demanded. "Tell us everything." Sanji lit a cigarette, his hand slightly unsteady. "After we separated, we saw Akiji's ship pursuing Luffy and Robin. There was some kind of confrontation, lights in the sky, the sea going crazy. We tried to circle back to help, but another marine vessel cut us off. We managed to sink it," Zoro continued, "but by the time we got back to where we'd last seen Luffy, there was nothing but ice and empty ocean. No ships, no people. We've been searching islands along the way here," Sanji added. "Asking questions, listening for rumors. The most consistent story is that there was a massive battle, and afterward, the Marines recovered valuable assets and returned to base." "Assets?" Usopp repeated. "You don't think?" "We don't know anything for sure," Zoro cut him off firmly. "We'll wait here until tomorrow night, as planned. If they don't show up, we'll start searching properly." None of us slept much that night. Morning came, and still no sign of our captain or Robin. Frankie sent his family members to gather information throughout the city, but they returned with nothing substantial, just more rumors and speculation. By afternoon, we were all on edge. Zoro had taken to pacing the underground chamber like a caged tiger, while Sanji chain-smoked in a corner. Usopp tinkered nervously with his weapons, and Chopper sorted and resorted his medical supplies. "I should have gone with him," Zoro muttered for perhaps the 20th time. "I'm his first mate. I should have been there." He made his decision, I reminded him, though my own guilt weighed heavily. He wanted to protect us. "We don't need protection," Zoro snapped. "We're supposed to be getting stronger together, not running away while he faces admirals alone." Before I could respond, the hidden door to our hideout burst open. We all leapt to our feet, weapons ready, only to freeze in shock. There stood Luffy, carrying an unconscious Robin in his arms. Both were soaked to the bone, their clothes torn and bodies covered in wounds. Luffy's hat hung by its string around his neck, and his normally vibrant face was drawn with exhaustion. But the crimson tide still glowed faintly at his chest, and his eyes burned with determination. "Luffy," we all cried in unison. He stumbled forward, gently laying Robin on the nearest couch. "Chopper," he gasped, his voice hoarse. "Help her. She's hurt bad." Our doctor immediately sprang into action, examining Robin with professional focus despite his trembling hooves. "What happened to her?" "Akiji," Luffy replied grimly. "He nearly froze her solid. I managed to thaw her out, but she hasn't fully woken up yet." While Chopper treated Robin, the rest of us helped Luffy to a chair. He collapsed into it, clearly at the limit of his endurance. "You look like hell," Zoro observed, though the relief in his voice was palpable. Luffy attempted a smile that came out as more of a grimace. "You should see the other guy." "Did you actually fight an admiral?" Usopp asked, somewhere between awe and horror. Luffy nodded slowly. "Had to. He was going to capture us both." His hand went to the stone at his chest. "The crimson tide, it helped. Gave me power I didn't know I had. But it wasn't enough." "What do you mean?" I asked, dread growing. "If it wasn't enough, how did you escape?" "Someone helped us," Luffy said, his voice dropping lower. "A man in a cloak. He appeared out of nowhere when Akiji had me pinned down. Said he'd been watching us since we found the artifacts." "Who was he?" Sanji pressed. Luffy looked up, his eyes haunted. He said he sailed with Gold Roger. That he was there when they found the original One Piece. A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the quiet sounds of Chopper treating Robin's injuries. Did he say what the One Piece actually is? Zoro finally asked. Luffy shook his head. Not exactly. But he told me the Crimson Tide and the Chart of Currents are just pieces of it, keys to something greater. And that I needed to be careful, because what I possess could rewrite the world. Rewrite the world? I repeated. What does that even mean? I don't know, Luffy admitted. He didn't have time to explain everything. Akiji was recovering, and our mystery helper created a distraction so we could escape. But he told me one more thing before he disappeared. Luffy paused, his expression troubled. He said my father is waiting for me. Your father? Usopp's eyes widened. You mean? Dragon, Luffy confirmed. The revolutionary. I didn't even know he was my father until Gramps told me a while back. Never met him. But apparently, he's interested in what we found. This was getting more complicated by the minute. Dragon, leader of the Revolutionary Army, was the most wanted man in the world, an enigmatic figure dedicated to overthrowing the world government. If he was somehow connected to the artifacts we'd found. There's more, Luffy continued, his voice dropping further. Robin woke up briefly during our escape. She was delirious, but she said something important. He glanced toward where Chopper was still treating her. She said she'd been sent to infiltrate our crew. That she was working for the government. What? We all exclaimed. She's a spy. Sanji looked devastated. Was, Luffy corrected. She said she couldn't go through with it anymore. That what she'd learned changed everything. Can we trust her? Zoro asked bluntly. This could be another deception. Luffy's expression hardened. She took a hit from Akiji meant for me. Nearly died protecting the Crimson Tide. That's good enough for me. No one argued further. Despite our shock and confusion, if Luffy believed in Robin, we would too. So what now, Captain? I asked quietly. The Marines will be searching everywhere for us, especially here in Water 7. We need a new ship, Luffy declared. Something faster, stronger. The Mary's taken too much damage, she won't survive another encounter like the last one. Actually, Frankie interjected, having listened quietly until now, I might have something that could help with that. I've been working on a design, something special. If you're interested. Luffy managed a genuine smile for the first time since his arrival. Show me. While Frankie took Luffy to see his ship designs, the rest of us gathered around Robin, who was beginning to stir under Chopper's care. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on our concerned faces. You're safe, Chopper assured her. We're in Water 7, hidden from the Marines. Robin attempted to sit up, wincing with the effort. Luffy? Is he? He's fine, I told her. He brought you here. Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by shame. I need to explain, she said softly. About why I joined your crew. Luffy told us, Zoro said, his tone carefully neutral. That you were working for the government. Robin nodded, her eyes downcast. CP9, Cipher Pol 9. A secret government agency. They had leverage over me. Threatened me with a buster call if I didn't help them recover the artifacts. A buster call? Sanji repeated. What's that? Total annihilation, Robin whispered. The most devastating attack the Marines can launch. Multiple vice admirals, at least 10 warships, all targeting a single location with orders to leave nothing alive. Her voice trembled. I've seen one before, as a child. It destroyed my home island of O'Hara because we archaeologists were studying the Void Century. The pieces clicked together in my mind. That's why you know so much about these artifacts. You've been researching them your whole life. She nodded again. When news spread that Straw Hat Luffy had found the One Piece, CP9 ordered me to infiltrate your crew and report on what you'd actually discovered. They wanted to know if it was the real thing. And is it? Usopp asked. Are the Crimson Tide and the Chart of Currents really part of the One Piece? Yes and no, Robin replied. The One Piece isn't a single treasure, as most people believe. It's scattered across the world, fragments of an ancient power that once unified all seas. Gold Roger found the central piece, but even he couldn't locate all the fragments. So what does it do? I pressed. Why is it so important that the world government would hunt us this relentlessly? Robin looked around at our expectant faces, then sighed deeply. Because whoever controls all pieces could potentially reshape the world's geography. Raise islands, sink continents, redirect currents, rewrite the map of our entire world. She paused, letting that sink in. In the wrong hands, it could mean the end of civilization as we know it. Silence fell as we processed this revelation. The weight of what we possessed, what Luffy carried around his neck, suddenly felt much heavier. That's why I couldn't go through with my mission, Robin continued quietly. When I saw how Luffy used the Crimson Tide, not for power or destruction, but to protect his friends, I realized the artifacts had chosen correctly. They're alive in their own way, responding to the heart of their bearer. In 20 years of research, I'd never seen anything like it. So you switched sides, Zoro stated. Betrayed your government masters. Robin met his gaze steadily. I chose freedom over tyranny. Just as your captain does every day. Before any of us could respond, the door burst open again. Frankie rushed in, his massive frame surprisingly agile in his haste. Bad news, he announced grimly. Just got word from my contacts in the harbor. 3 marine battleships have arrived, including Fleet Admiral Sengoku's flagship. And they're not alone. He paused, his expression grim. There's a ship flying the flag of CP9, the government's elite assassins. They found us, I whispered, fear settling like ice in my stomach. How? Sanji demanded. We were so careful. Frankie shook his head. Doesn't matter how. What matters is that they're preparing for a buster call. They've already started evacuating civilians from the harbor district. Robin's face went pale. No, not again. Not because of me. Where's Luffy? Zoro demanded, hand already on his swords. In my workshop, Frankie replied. Already preparing for battle. Said to tell you all to get ready. Ready for what? Usopp squeaked. We can't fight a buster call. The answer came from behind us. Luffy stood in the doorway, the Crimson Tide blazing at his chest like a miniature sun. His exhaustion seemed to have vanished, replaced by a focus and determination that transformed his normally carefree face. Not fight, he said quietly. Not run either. It's time to stand our ground. Luffy, I began hesitantly, you heard what Robin said. A buster call is, I know what it is, he cut me off. And I know what we are too. We're the crew that found the One Piece, or part of it, anyway. If we keep running, they'll never stop hunting us. So instead, we're going to send a message. Zoro smiled grimly, understanding immediately. We're going to show them we're not afraid. Luffy nodded. Exactly. Frankie's built a new ship for us, something amazing. But before we sail it out of here, I'm going to use the Crimson Tide one more time. To do what? Chopper asked nervously. Luffy's eyes gleamed with determination. To speak to the whole world. Frankie's workshop turned out to be an enormous underground dry dock, accessible through Water 7's complex canal system. And there, floating in the massive basin, was our new ship, the most beautiful vessel I'd ever seen. Meet the Thousand Sunny, Frankie announced proudly. Built with atom wood, the strongest timber in the world. Triple-layered hull, reinforced keel, specialized sail configuration for maximum speed. Plus a few super special features I added just for you. The ship was at least twice the size of the Going Merry, with a lion figurehead that seemed to capture Luffy's fierce spirit perfectly. Despite our dire situation, we couldn't help but admire Franky's craftsmanship. "How did you build this so quickly?" Sanji asked, running a hand along the polished railing. Franky grinned. "I've been working on her for years, my dream ship. Just needed the right crew to sail her." "She's perfect," Luffy declared, leaping aboard with his usual energy. "Now we just need to prepare for our announcement." While the others explored the Sunny, Luffy took me aside to explain his plan. It was audacious, potentially suicidal, but undeniably in character for our captain. "You want to broadcast a message to the entire world?" I repeated, just to be sure I'd heard correctly. "Using the Crimson Tide's power?" He nodded eagerly. "Robin says it can be done. The stone can send energy waves through water, and water connects everything. If we amplify it properly, we can create a phenomenon visible across all seas." "And then what?" "We tell everyone about the One Piece. About what the world government is hiding." "No," Luffy's face grew serious. "We tell them about freedom. That's what being Pirate King really means, not treasure or power, but the freedom to sail anywhere without fear. The world government wants everyone afraid, controlled. We're going to show them there's another way." I studied his face, the face of the boy who had saved my village, who had declared war on the entire East Blue Navy to protect me, who had never once wavered in his dream despite impossible odds. If anyone could defy the world itself, it was him. "All right," I agreed. "Let's do it." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Franky and Usopp worked to modify the Sunny's systems to channel the Crimson Tide's energy. Zoro and Sanji gathered supplies and prepared the ship for immediate departure. Chopper continued treating Robin's remaining injuries while she shared everything she knew about the stone's capabilities. Above us, we could sense the gathering storm. More marine ships arriving, troops being deployed throughout Water 7, the tension building like pressure before an explosion. Our time was running out. "They're starting to search the lower districts," Franky reported after receiving a message from one of his family members. "Won't be long before they find this place." "We're ready," Luffy declared. He stood at the Sunny's bow, the Crimson Tide now removed from its cord and held in both hands. The stone's glow had intensified, bathing the entire dry dock in crimson light. "Everyone to your positions," he ordered. "Franky, open the sea gates when I give the signal." We moved to our assigned stations, each feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just an escape, it was a declaration. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever. Luffy closed his eyes, holding the stone high. Its light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing second. The water in the dry dock began to stir, ripples forming and spreading outward from the Sunny in perfect circles. "It's working," Robin whispered, awe in her voice. "The resonance is building." The ripples became waves, then geysers that shot upward only to fall back as glowing red rain. The Crimson Tide was now so bright it hurt to look at directly, its energy visibly flowing into Luffy and then out again into the surrounding water. "Now, Franky!" Luffy shouted. The shipwright pulled a massive lever, and the sea gates began to open, connecting our basin to Water 7's main harbor, and beyond that, to the open ocean. The moment the gates parted, the energy surged forward like a living thing, a wave of crimson light that raced through the water toward the waiting marine fleet. We watched, breathless, as it reached the harbor and split into countless branches, each seeking a different path through the canals and waterways of Water 7. "What's happening?" Chopper asked, eyes wide with wonder. "The tide is mapping the city," Robin explained. "Creating a network that," her words cut off as a column of red light erupted from the harbor's center, shooting skyward with such force that the entire city trembled. The light rose higher and higher, until it seemed to touch the clouds themselves, then spread outward like an unfurling canopy, covering all of Water 7 in a dome of shimmering crimson. Inside that dome, something impossible happened. Every drop of water in the city, from the smallest puddle to the harbor itself, began to glow with the same red light. The entire city was transformed into a vast, interconnected circuit of energy. And at its center stood Luffy, channeling it all through the crimson tide, his face set in lines of intense concentration. When he finally spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, carried by the water itself to every corner of Water 7. "My name is Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be king of the pirates." His declaration echoed across the city, across the harbor, across the waiting marine fleet. I could almost feel the shock rippling through their ranks. "You've been hunting us because you think we found the One Piece," Luffy continued, his voice growing stronger. "Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But what I know for sure is that the world government is afraid of knowledge, afraid of freedom, afraid of people learning the truth about their own history." The dome of light pulsed with his words, sending waves of energy outward that I suspected were traveling far beyond Water 7, perhaps to every corner of the Grand Line. "I don't care about ruling anything," Luffy declared. "I don't want to control the world or reshape it. All I want is the freedom to sail with my friends and follow our dreams. But if the world government keeps trying to take that freedom away, from us, from you, from anyone, then yeah, I'll fight back." A rumble of thunder punctuated his words, though the sky remained clear. The energy was building, creating its own weather patterns above the city. "So here's my message," Luffy's voice rang out clear and defiant. "To the Marines, to the world government, to anyone listening, we're not running anymore. We're not hiding. We're sailing forward, toward our dreams. And if that means changing the world along the way, then that's what we'll do." With those final words, the energy reached its peak. The dome of light contracted suddenly, rushing back toward Luffy and the crimson tide, then exploded outward in a shockwave that raced across the ocean in all directions, a pulse of power that would be felt on shores thousands of miles away. As the light faded, Luffy lowered the stone, swaying slightly from the effort. I rushed to support him before he could fall. "Did it work?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "It worked," Robin confirmed, awe in her tone. "That message will have reached every island connected by sea, which is to say, the entire world." Luffy grinned, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Good. Then it's time to go." The marine fleet had been temporarily disabled by the energy pulse, their ships drifting in confusion. But already, signals were flashing between vessels as they regrouped. "Full sail!" Frankie shouted, taking the helm. "We're busting out of here in super style." The Thousand Sunny surged forward, riding the residual energy of the crimson tide. As we approached the harbor entrance where the marine blockade waited, Frankie revealed one of his special features. "Coup de burst," he announced, activating a system that compressed air in the ship's stern. With an enormous explosion of power, the Sunny literally flew into the air, soaring over the stunned marine vessels before splashing down beyond their perimeter. "Amazing!" Luffy shouted, his energy seemingly renewed by the spectacle. Behind us, alarms blared as the Marines scrambled to pursue. But the Sunny was already catching the wind, pulling away with speed the Going Merry could never have matched. "They're preparing to fire," Usopp reported from the crow's nest, his spyglass trained on the fleet. "Let them," Zoro said calmly, standing beside Luffy at the stern. "By the time they get organized, we'll be long gone." Sure enough, though cannons roared behind us, their shots fell short. The Thousand Sunny raced ahead, leaving Water 7 and the marine fleet receding in our wake. As we gathered on deck, watching our pursuers fall behind, a strange calm settled over us. We had just declared war on the world government in the most public way possible. There would be no going back from this, no return to the relative anonymity we'd once enjoyed. So, Sanji lit a fresh cigarette. "Where to now, Captain?" Luffy, the crimson tide once again hanging from a cord around his neck, looked out at the open sea ahead. "Wherever the current takes us," he said simply. We've got a new ship, part of the One Piece, and the whole world watching. Sounds like a real adventure to me. His enthusiasm was infectious, as always. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, we couldn't help but share his excitement. This was why we'd followed him in the first place, for moments exactly like this one. As the thousand sunny carried us toward the horizon and whatever awaited beyond, I realized something important: finding the One Piece hadn't ended our journey. In many ways, it had only just begun. The world government's response to Luffy's broadcast was swift and ruthless. Within days, new wanted posters appeared across the Grand Line, with bounties that made our previous ones look like pocket change. Luffy's had skyrocketed to 800 million beri, a figure previously reserved for the most notorious pirates in history. But the government's propaganda machine had met unexpected resistance. Luffy's message had resonated with people throughout the world. Stories spread of ordinary citizens questioning official narratives, of pirates and revolutionaries emboldened by our stand at Water 7. A week after our escape, as we navigated the treacherous waters of the New World, Robin brought us a newspaper with a troubling headline: World Government Declares Straw Hat Crisis, Navy Headquarters Mobilizes All Forces. They're calling it an extraordinary threat to world stability, she explained grimly. Fleet Admiral Sengoku has been given unprecedented authority to pursue and capture us by any means necessary. Let them come, Zoro said, polishing his swords with practiced calm. We're stronger than we were before. Indeed, our encounters since Water 7 had proven the thousand sunnies worth many times over. Faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with Frankie's arsenal of super weapons, she had carried us through storms and battles that would have destroyed the Mary. More importantly, Luffy's control over the Crimson Tide had grown stronger with each passing day. What had once exhausted him to use now seemed almost effortless, as if the stone and its bearer were becoming one. There's something else you should see, Robin added, spreading a different newspaper on the table. This one was smaller, clearly printed in secret. The Revolutionary Army has gone public with support for our cause. The headline was bold: Dragon stands with Straw Hat, truth cannot be silenced. My dad, Luffy murmured, studying the grainy photo of the world's most wanted man. Still haven't met him face to face. You might get your chance soon, Robin replied. According to my sources, he's been trying to establish contact with us since your broadcast. Why? Usopp asked nervously. What does the Revolutionary Army want with us? Robin's expression was carefully neutral. I believe they want what we have, the knowledge the artifacts contain, the power they represent. But more than that, they want what you represent now, Luffy. A symbol of defiance that's capturing people's imagination. Luffy frowned slightly. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a pirate. You're both, I told him gently. Whether you wanted it or not. Before he could respond, Frankie's voice boomed from outside, ship approaching. Port side. We rushed to the railing, weapons ready. The approaching vessel flew no flag, but its distinctive design was unmistakable to anyone familiar with the underworld of the Grand Line, a cipher pole stealth ship, designed for speed and surprise attacks. CP9, Robin whispered, tension evident in every line of her body. They found us. How do they keep doing that? Usopp groaned. We've been so careful. A terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. Luffy, the Crimson Tide, could they be tracking its energy somehow? Robin's eyes widened slightly. Of course. The stone's power leaves traces in the water, especially after major usage. They could be following that trail. Then we need to mask it somehow, Sanji suggested. Or use it against them, Luffy countered, his hand going to the stone. Let's give them what they want, up close and personal. Before we could argue, he'd vaulted onto the figurehead, the Crimson Tide already glowing in his palm. The sea between our ships began to churn as Luffy channeled the stone's power, creating a current that pulled the CP9 vessel inexorably toward us. What is he doing? Chopper exclaimed. Bringing them closer. Zoro grinned wolfishly. Setting up a welcoming committee. Sure enough, as the government ship drew near, its occupants became visible, black-clad agents of CP9, the world government's elite assassins. At their center stood a tall man with long hair and a square nose, his eyes cold as he surveyed our deck. Rob Lucci, Robin breathed, fear and hatred mingling in her voice. The strongest CP9 agent in history. The ships came to rest side by side, separated by mere feet of churning water. Neither crew moved, the tension building like a physical force between us. Monkey D. Luffy, Lucci called across the gap, his voice eerily calm. By order of the world government, you are commanded to surrender the artifacts in your possession and submit to immediate arrest. Luffy tilted his head, studying the CP9 agent with unusual intensity. You know, I've been thinking about something. Everyone keeps calling these things artifacts, like they're just old objects. But they're alive somehow. They chose me. He held up the glowing stone. And I don't think they want to go with you. Their desires are irrelevant, Lucci replied coldly. As are yours. What matters is maintaining world order. Your version of order, Robin cut in, stepping forward despite her lingering injuries. Built on lies and the blood of innocents. Lucci's gaze shifted to her, hardening further. The traitor speaks of betrayal. How fitting. I betrayed nothing worth serving, she shot back. You hunt knowledge because you fear it. You destroy lives to protect a system built on deception. Enough talk, Lucci declared, removing his jacket to reveal his powerfully muscled torso. We will take what we came for. The CP9 agents tensed, clearly preparing to leap across to our ship. We readied ourselves for battle, each taking fighting stances. But before either side could move, Luffy did something unexpected. He raised the crimson tide high, then plunged his hand, stone and all, directly into the sea between the ships. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The water flashed brilliant red, then began to rise, forming a wall between the vessels. But this wasn't just water, it was something more solid, more deliberate. What's happening? Chopper gasped as the liquid barrier continued to grow. He's creating a division, Robin explained, awe in her voice. Separating the waters. The barrier stretched higher and wider, pushing the ships apart with inexorable force. On the CP9 vessel, Lucci's face contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. Fire, he ordered, and his agents raised weapons. But the barrier had already enveloped their ship, creating a perfect dome of crimson-tinged water that isolated them completely. We could see them through the translucent barrier, firing bullets that simply slowed and stopped in the dense liquid wall. Luffy stood firm, his arms still submerged to the elbow in the sea, his face set in lines of concentration. Robin, he called without turning. What you said about the One Piece being able to reshape geography, that's true, right? Yes, she confirmed cautiously. In theory, it could alter the very fabric of the world. Good, Luffy nodded. Then let's test that theory. The sea around us began to change. Not just the barrier holding CP9 captive, but the very structure of the water itself. It moved like something alive, responding to Luffy's will in ways that defied natural law. Beneath the CP9 ship, a whirlpool formed, not the chaotic maelstrom we'd seen before, but a controlled, perfect spiral that began to descend into the depths. Their vessel, caught in its center, seemed to hover momentarily, then began to sink with agonizing slowness. Luffy! I called out, alarmed. What are you doing? Sending them away, he replied, strain evident in his voice. Not killing them. Just, relocating them. Through the transparent barrier, we could see the panic on the CP9 agents' faces as their ship descended. Lucci alone remained calm, his eyes locked with Luffy's in a silent promise of future confrontation. Then they were gone, swallowed by the depths. The whirlpool closed above them, the sea returning to its normal state as Luffy withdrew his hand. The crimson tide's glow faded, and he swayed slightly from the effort. "Where did you send them?" Zoro asked, steadying his captain. Luffy grinned weakly. "An island about 50 miles south. Uninhabited, but they'll be fine. Might take them a while to get back to civilization though." Robin stared at him in disbelief. "You transported their entire ship? Through the sea itself?" "Yeah," Luffy shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "The stone showed me how." "That should be impossible," she whispered. "Even with the Crimson Tide's power, that level of manipulation." "Nothing's impossible for our captain," Zoro stated firmly, though I caught the flash of concern in his eyes. Each time Luffy used the stone's power, he seemed to change slightly, becoming more connected to it, more aware of its capabilities. "We should keep moving," Sanji suggested, already checking our heading. "They might have backup nearby." As we resumed our journey, the encounter with CP9 weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The world government was becoming more desperate, sending their elite forces after us directly. And Luffy's powers were growing in ways none of us fully understood. That night, I found him sitting alone on the Sunny's figurehead, staring at the crimson tide as it pulsed gently in his palm. The moonlight gave his face an otherworldly quality, accentuating the changes I'd begun to notice, a new intensity in his eyes, a stillness that occasionally replaced his usual boundless energy. "You okay?" I asked, settling beside him. He nodded slowly. "Just thinking." "That's becoming a habit," I teased gently. "Should we be worried?" A ghost of his usual grin appeared. "Maybe a little." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the moonlight play across the waves. Finally, he spoke again. "The stone's changing me, Nami." I'd suspected as much, but hearing him acknowledge it sent a chill through me. "Changing how?" "It's like I can see things differently now. The currents, the tides, the way water connects everything." He gestured at the vast ocean around us. "It's all part of one system, one giant network. And I can feel all of it." "Is it hurting you?" I asked carefully. He considered this. "No. Not exactly. It's more like becoming more. Like there was all this stuff I never noticed before, and now I can't stop noticing it." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "Robin says the One Piece could reshape the world. I think I'm starting to understand how." "That's a lot of power for one person," I observed, watching his reaction carefully. "Yeah," he agreed, his voice uncharacteristically solemn. "Too much, maybe." "What do you mean?" He turned to face me directly, and in the moonlight, I could see genuine concern in his eyes. "What if this power changes me too much? What if I become someone else, someone who cares more about controlling the sea than sailing free on it?" I placed my hand over his, feeling the warmth of the stone between our palms. "That won't happen." "You know why?" "Why?" "Because you're asking that question in the first place." I squeezed his hand gently. "The Luffy I know doesn't want power for its own sake. Never has. That's why the stone chose you, remember?" He smiled then, a genuine smile that reminded me of the carefree boy who'd saved me from Arlong. "Thanks, Nami." We stayed there a while longer, watching the stars and feeling the sunny rock gently beneath us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers. But for tonight, at least, we had this moment of peace. 3 days later, we encountered the first real test of Luffy's resolve. We'd been following the chart of currents toward what Robin believed might be another piece of the One Piece, a location marked by a symbol similar to the one that had led us to the Crimson Tide. The journey had taken us into a remote region of the New World, where the sea itself seemed to defy conventional navigation. "Something's wrong," I announced after checking my instruments for the 3rd time. "The log pose is spinning randomly. I can't get a consistent reading." Robin studied our position on both conventional charts and the ancient map. We've entered what ancient mariners called the veiled waters, a region where normal navigation becomes impossible due to fluctuating magnetic fields. So we're lost? Usopp asked nervously. Not lost, Robin corrected. The chart of currents shows a path through this region. But it requires following a very specific route that changes with the phases of the moon. Which is why normal ships can't navigate it, I realized. Without the chart, they'd sail in circles until they ran out of supplies. Or worse, Robin added grimly. This area is notorious for disappearances. Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly straightened. There's something ahead. We all turned to look. At first, I saw nothing but empty ocean. Then, gradually, a shape began to materialize in the distance, a massive silhouette that seemed to flicker in and out of visibility. Is that an island? Chopper squinted, trying to make it out. No, Robin breathed. It's a ship. As we drew closer, the shape solidified, revealing the largest vessel I had ever seen. It dwarfed even marine battleships, its multiple decks rising like a floating city. Its wood was dark with age, its sails tattered yet somehow still intact. And on those sails, barely visible through years of weathering, was an unmistakable symbol, the Jolly Roger of the Roger Pirates. That's impossible, Sanji whispered, cigarette. Forgotten between his lips. That ship should be Oro Jackson, Robin finished for him. Gold Roger's legendary vessel. Supposedly destroyed after his execution. Obviously not, Zoro observed dryly. As the Thousand Sunny approached the ghost ship, an eerie silence fell over us all. No bird circled its masts, no signs of life disturbed its deck. It simply waited, like a sentinel guarding the mysterious waters. We need to investigate, Luffy declared, already preparing to board. Are you crazy? Usopp protested. That thing has probably been drifting for over 20 years. It's obviously haunted or cursed or both. It's also directly on the path marked in our chart, Robin pointed out. I don't think that's coincidence. Despite Usopp's continued objections, we prepared to board the legendary vessel. Luffy, Zoro, Robin, and I would explore while Sanji, Chopper, Frankie, and Usopp remained with the Sunny in case a quick escape became necessary. As we approached in the Mini Mary, the sheer scale of the Oro Jackson became even more apparent. It was a titan among ships, designed not just for speed or battle but for extended voyages into the unknown reaches of the world. We boarded cautiously, half expecting to be challenged by ghosts of the past. Instead, we found only silence and the weight of history. The deck was remarkably well preserved, as if time itself moved differently here. This doesn't make sense, I whispered, running a hand along the polished railing. This ship should be rotting, overtaken by the elements. Unless it's been maintained, Zoro suggested, hand on his swords as he scanned for threats. Or preserved by something beyond natural forces, Robin added, studying our surroundings with professional interest. Luffy walked ahead, drawn to the ship's massive helm. The crimson tide glowed faintly at his chest, responding to something we couldn't perceive. Luffy? I called softly. What is it? The stone, he replied without turning. It's happy. Like it's come home. Robin moved swiftly to join him. Captain, may I see the crimson tide? Just for a moment. Luffy hesitated, then carefully removed the stone from its cord. For the first time since we'd found it, it didn't burn when he handed it to someone else. Robin held it gently, bringing it close to the ship's wheel. The reaction was immediate and startling. Where the stone touched the wood, golden lines began to spread, forming intricate patterns that raced across the deck, up the masts, along the railings, illuminating the entire ship with a network of glowing pathways. It's responding to the ship, Robin breathed. Or rather, to something within it. The golden lines converged at a point near the captain's quarters, forming a glowing doorway where none had been visible before. I think we're being invited in, Luffy grinned, retrieving the stone from Robin and leading the way toward the mysterious entrance. Inside, we found a chamber that defied all expectations. Unlike the weathered exterior of the ship, this room appeared brand new, a perfectly preserved capsule of history. Charts and maps lined the walls, instruments of navigation filled glass cases, and at the center stood a large table with a single object upon it, a wooden box, identical to the one that had contained the Crimson Tide. "Another piece," Robin whispered reverently. Luffy approached the box slowly, the stone at his chest pulsing in time with his heartbeat. As he reached for it, a voice spoke from the shadows. "I've been waiting a long time, boy. We whirled, weapons ready." From a darkened corner stepped an elderly man, his white beard flowing over a weather-beaten face lined with age and experience. Despite his years, he moved with the grace of a fighter, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Who are you?" Zoro demanded, swords partially drawn. The old man smiled, revealing gold-capped teeth. "Once, they called me Silver's Rayleigh, first mate of the Roger pirates." He fixed his gaze on Luffy. "Now I'm just the caretaker of my captain's legacy, waiting for the one he foretold would come." "Rayleigh?" Robin's eyes widened in recognition. "The Dark King himself." "You know me," he observed. "Good. That will save time on introductions." He gestured to the box on the table. "What matters is that you found your way here, guided by the Crimson Tide. Just as Roger predicted. Your captain knew someone would find these artifacts?" I asked, trying to process this unexpected development. Rayleigh nodded. Roger could hear the voice of all things. In his final days, as his illness claimed him, that ability grew stronger. He saw fragments of what was to come, including a boy with a straw hat who would find what we had found, but understand it in a way we never could. His gaze settled on Luffy's hat. "That hat, it was my captain's once. Then Shanks'. Now yours. The circle completes itself." Luffy touched the brim of his treasured hat. "Shanks never told me it belonged to Gold Roger." "Some truths reveal themselves only when the time is right," Rayleigh replied cryptically. "Just as the Crimson Tide revealed itself to you when you were ready to bear its burden." "And what's in this box?" Luffy gestured to the wooden container. "Another burden." "Another key," Rayleigh corrected. "What you call the One Piece isn't a single treasure, but a collection of keys that together unlock the true legacy of the ancient kingdom. Roger found some, but not all. The rest were scattered, hidden, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Zoro pressed. "For the dawn of a new era," Rayleigh answered. "For someone who could use them not for power or destruction, but to restore what was broken long ago." Luffy stared at the box for a long moment, then at the glowing stone in his hand. "What if I don't want this responsibility? What if I just want to be free, to have adventures with my friends?" Rayleigh's expression softened. "That desire for simple freedom is precisely why you're the right person to bear this burden." He gestured to the box. "Open it. See what awaits." With a deep breath, Luffy stepped forward and lifted the box's lid. Inside lay another stone, similar to the Crimson Tide but colored a deep blue that seemed to contain swirling patterns of its own. The Azure Current, Rayleigh named it. Where the Crimson Tide controls the waters, the Azure Current commands the wind. Together, they grant mastery over the primary forces that shape our world's weather. Luffy reached for the stone cautiously. As his fingers touched it, both gems began to glow, the red and blue lights merging to create a purple illumination that filled the chamber. "They recognize each other," Robin observed. "And they recognize you." Luffy lifted the Azure Current from its resting place. Unlike the Crimson Tide's initial heat, this stone felt cool to the touch, a pleasant chill that spread up his arm. "There are 5 in total," Rayleigh explained. "Each controlling an element of nature, water, wind, earth, fire, and the 5th, well, the 5th is something else entirely." He looked at Luffy seriously. "Together, they form the true One Piece. The power to reshape the very world. Why are you giving this to me? Luffy asked, genuine confusion in his voice. You don't even know me. Rayleigh smiled. I know enough. I've been watching your journey since you first set sail from the East Blue. I've seen how you fight not for yourself, but for others. How you value freedom above power, friendship above conquest. Roger saw the same qualities in your future. The man who helped us escape from Akiji, I realized suddenly. That was you, wasn't it? Rayleigh inclined his head in acknowledgement. I've intervened when necessary. But your path is your own to walk. And where does this path lead? Robin asked. If Luffy gathers all 5 stones, what then? To Laugh Tale, Rayleigh replied. The final island, where the truth of the Void Century awaits. Where the power of the One Piece can be fully realized. To do what? Luffy persisted. What am I supposed to do with this power? Rayleigh's expression grew solemn. That, Straw Hat Luffy, is for you to decide. Roger himself died without using it, believing the world wasn't ready. But times have changed. The balance of power shifts. The world government grows more desperate to maintain its control. And now they're hunting us, Zoro added grimly. With increasingly deadly force, Rayleigh confirmed. They know what the stones represent, the end of their absolute authority. They will stop at nothing to prevent you from gathering all 5. Luffy looked down at the 2 stones in his hands, their lights pulsing in harmony. Robin said these could rewrite the world. Rayleigh nodded. They can raise islands from the depths, sink continents beneath the waves, redirect the very currents that govern our planet's climate. In ancient times, they were used to create the world as we know it now. In the Void Century, they were used again, to destroy a civilization that threatened the founders of what would become the world government. Used by whom? Robin asked intently. By the royal family of the ancient kingdom, Rayleigh replied. The civilization whose very name has been erased from history. The kingdom whose descendants still live, unaware of their heritage. His gaze settled meaningfully on Luffy, who blinked in confusion. Wait, you don't mean, the D, in your name, boy. It isn't just a letter. It's a remnant of a title once held by the rulers of the world. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the gentle creaking of the ship around us. Monkey D, Luffy, Robin whispered. Dragon D, Monkey. Joel D, Roger. Portgas D, Ace. All carriers of the will of D. Inheritors of a legacy older than the world government itself, Rayleigh confirmed. Though few know what that legacy truly means anymore. Luffy shook his head stubbornly. I don't care about ancient kingdoms or lost civilizations. I don't want to rule anything. And that, Rayleigh said with a satisfied smile, is precisely why Roger believed you would be the one to succeed where he could not. He gestured to the stones. Take them. Continue your journey. Find the remaining 3. What you do with them after that, well, that choice will shape the coming era. As we prepared to leave the Oro Jackson with our new treasure, Rayleigh offered one final piece of advice. The world government isn't your only concern, he warned. Others seek the stones as well. Pirates, revolutionaries, even some within the Marines who question their orders. Trust carefully, and remember, the stones themselves have a will of their own. They chose you, Straw Hat. Don't disappoint them. Back aboard the Thousand Sunny, we shared our discovery with the rest of the crew. The azure current joined the crimson tide on a new cord around Luffy's neck, their contrasting colors creating a striking visual reminder of the growing power our captain carried. So what now? Sanji asked after we'd explained everything. We hunt for the other 3 stones. Luffy nodded, unusually thoughtful. According to Rayleigh, the chart of currents shows the locations of all 5. We already have 2. And the world government knows we're collecting them, Zoro added. They'll be guarding the remaining locations with everything they've got. Not to mention other pirates who might have heard the rumors, Frankie pointed out. Robin spread the ancient map on the table, studying it with renewed understanding. There are 3 locations marked with symbols similar to where we found the stones. The nearest appears to be about 5 days' journey from here, near an archipelago known as the Ember Islands. Then that's where we're headed, Luffy declared. We'll find the 3rd stone and figure out our next move from there. As the others discussed preparations for the journey, I noticed Luffy slip away to the deck. I followed, finding him at the railing, both stones in his palms as he stared out at the horizon. Heavy thoughts? I asked, joining him. He nodded slightly. Rayleigh said these things could reshape the world. That's a lot. Too much for one person, I agreed. But not too much for us, he said, turning to me with sudden intensity. Not too much for our crew. Together. I smiled, touched by his faith in us. Together, I agreed. As we set course for the Ember Islands, none of us could have predicted how quickly events would escalate, or how the world would respond to Luffy's growing power. The journey toward the remaining pieces of the One Piece had truly begun, and with it, the final confrontation that would determine not just our fate, but the fate of the entire world. Chapter 3, Redefining the Dream. The horizon blazed orange as the Thousand Sunny cut through the waves toward Water 7. We'd been sailing for 3 days since our encounter with Rayleigh, and tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Marines at 2 o'clock. Usopp's voice rang out from the crow's nest. I gripped the ship's wheel tighter, checking our heading. How many? Just 1 ship. But it's big, battleship class. Luffy bounded to the bow, the twin stones at his neck glinting in the sunset, one red as blood, one blue as the deepest ocean. 3 weeks had passed since we'd found the Azure Current, and in that time, we'd narrowly escaped capture a dozen times. The world government had mobilized forces unlike anything we'd ever seen. Should we engage or run? Zoro asked, already tying his bandana around his head. Luffy's eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching vessel. Neither. We hide. That was new. The old Luffy would have rushed into battle without hesitation. But the stones had changed him, made him more strategic, more aware of when to fight and when to withdraw. Frankie. Luffy called. Time to test that thing we talked about. Our newest crew member grinned from ear to ear, his massive blue pompadour bouncing as he rushed to a control panel near the helm. You got it, Captain. One super disappearing act coming right up. Frankie had joined us permanently after our broadcast from Water 7, abandoning his dismantling business to follow Luffy's vision of freedom. His shipwright skills had proved invaluable, especially as he continued to enhance the Sunny with increasingly elaborate, special features. Everyone below deck. Frankie ordered, flipping switches and turning dials. Soldier dock system activating. Coup de vent primed for submersion. Submersion. Chopper squeaked. We're going underwater. Robin smiled mysteriously. Fascinating. I've read about experimental submarines, but never thought I'd sail on one. Not a submarine exactly, Frankie corrected as we hurried below. More like a temporary diving capability. We can stay under for 30 minutes, maybe less with devil fruit users aboard. I grabbed the charts of currents before heading below, giving the marine ship one last glance. They hadn't spotted us yet, we still had the element of surprise. The interior of the Sunny transformed before our eyes as Frankie's mechanisms whirred to life. Watertight seals engaged around the doors and windows, oxygen tanks deployed from hidden compartments, and a periscope extended into the central cabin. Diving in 3, 2, 1. Super submersion. The deck tilted beneath us as compressed air exploded from the Sunny's underside, driving the ship beneath the waves with startling speed. Water rushed over the reinforced glass portholes, and for a moment, I felt panic clawing at my throat. We were pirates, meant to sail atop the waves, not beneath them. Then I saw Luffy's face. Rather than showing fear, his eyes were wide with childlike wonder. "This is awesome," he shouted, pressing his face against a porthole as schools of fish darted past. "Why didn't we think of this sooner?" "Because it's completely insane," Usopp muttered, though he too was captivated by the underwater view. Through the periscope, we could see the marine vessel passing directly overhead, oblivious to our presence just 50 feet below. For once, we had evaded detection completely. "How much longer until we reach Water 7? Robin asked, consulting my charts. "Less than a day," I replied. "The current's been favorable." Zoro leaned against a wall, arms crossed. "And what's the plan when we get there? We can't exactly dock openly in the harbor." All eyes turned to Luffy, who had grown unusually quiet, his gaze distant as his fingers absently stroked the twin stones at his chest. "Luffy?" I prompted gently. He blinked, returning to the present moment. "Sorry." The stones were talking to me again. None of us questioned this anymore. Since acquiring the Azure Current, Luffy's connection to the stones had deepened. Sometimes he'd spend hours in silent communion with them, emerging with insights about currents or weather patterns that even I, as a navigator, couldn't explain. "We're not sneaking into Water 7, he announced, his voice firmer than usual. "We're sailing straight into the main harbor at noon tomorrow." "What?" Usopp, Chopper, and I exclaimed simultaneously. "That's suicide," Sanji added, cigarette dangling from his lip. "Every marine in the area will be waiting for us." "Exactly," Luffy nodded, a familiar grin spreading across his face, the one that meant he'd made up his mind and nothing would change it. "I'm tired of running. Tired of hiding. That's not freedom, and it's not how the Pirate King should live." "But Luffy," I objected, "we're outnumbered. The world government has declared total war on us. Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself has taken personal command of the operation to capture us." "I know." Luffy's grin didn't falter. "And that's why we need to stand our ground. Show them we're not afraid." He looked around at each of us. "Running away has kept us alive, but we're not really living. Not the way we want to." A heavy silence fell as we absorbed his words. He was right, of course. The constant evasion had worn us down, stealing the joy from our journey. We'd found pieces of the legendary One Piece, but the discovery had become more burden than triumph. "So what's the alternative?" Zoro asked, though his slight smile suggested he already knew, and approved. "We make a stand," Luffy declared. "Not just to fight, but to send a message. To tell the world what the One Piece really means, what being Pirate King is really about." Robin's eyes widened with understanding. "You want to complete what you started during our broadcast from Water 7. Luffy nodded. "The stones have shown me things, history, truth. Stuff the world government doesn't want anyone to know. It's time people heard it. They'll throw everything they have at us," Frankie warned, though he was already grinning with anticipation. "Let them," Luffy replied simply. "We'll be ready." As we resurfaced and continued our journey toward Water 7, I studied the twin stones hanging from Luffy's neck. Their soft glow had become a constant presence, like a heartbeat that echoed his own. Whatever power they contained had bonded with him completely, but had it changed him into someone we no longer recognized? Or simply revealed the leader he was always meant to become? Dawn brought the first glimpse of Water 7 on the horizon, the city of water and shipwrights, rising from the sea like a massive fountain. Under different circumstances, I might have admired its beauty. Now I could only note with growing apprehension the number of ships surrounding it. "That's not good," Usopp murmured, lowering his spyglass. "I count at least 15 marine vessels blockading the harbor. Plus something else." "What?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Pirate ships," he replied grimly. "Big ones. Flying flags I don't recognize." Luffy took the spyglass, surveying the scene. "That's Black Maria's galleon," he identified. "And there's Captain Vero's new ship." Looks like the Marines aren't the only ones who want the One Piece. They're working together? Chopper asked incredulously. Robin shook her head. Unlikely. More probably they've formed a temporary alliance of convenience. The Marines want to capture us for the world government. The pirates want to steal the stones for themselves. Either way, we're sailing into a trap, Sanji observed, lighting a fresh cigarette. Not a trap if we know it's there, Luffy countered. His voice had that new quality we'd all noticed, a calm certainty that seemed to settle the very air around him. Frankie, prepare all systems. Usopp, check our ammunition. Sanji, we'll need food for a long fight. Chopper, medical supplies. As everyone moved to their assigned tasks, Luffy pulled me aside along with Robin and Zoro. I need you three for something specific, he said, his tone deadly serious. Nami, can you create a storm? A big one, centered just over the harbor. I blinked in surprise. With the right atmospheric conditions, maybe. But it would take time to build naturally. What if it didn't need to be natural? He touched the azure current. This stone controls wind. The crimson tide controls water. Together. You could create the perfect conditions for a major storm system, Robin finished, eyes widening. Ingenious. But why? Zoro asked pragmatically. Confusion, Luffy replied. Cover. And a demonstration of power. He looked directly at me. Can you direct it once it forms? Keep it contained where we want it. I considered the challenge. With your help generating the conditions, yes. I could navigate us through it while everyone else gets tossed around. Good. He turned to Robin. I need you to prepare a message, something that explains the truth about the One Piece, about the Void Century, about everything you've learned. Something clear enough that anyone can understand. A declaration to the world, she nodded thoughtfully. I can prepare it. And me? Zoro prompted. Luffy's expression hardened. You'll be my shield. When we make our move, everyone will try to take the stones. I need you watching my back. Always, the swordsman replied simply. As the Thousand Sunny drew closer to Water 7, a strange phenomenon occurred. The blockading ships, rather than immediately moving to intercept us, seemed to hesitate, as if uncertain how to respond to our direct approach. They didn't expect us to just sail right up to them, Sanji noted with a smirk. Confusion is a weapon, Robin observed. They're asking themselves why we would do something so seemingly foolish. Through the spyglass, I could see officers on the marine vessels signaling frantically to each other. The pirate ships were more decisive, already turning to form a secondary blockade behind us, cutting off retreat. They're boxing us in, Frankie observed from the helm. Luffy nodded. Good. Exactly what we want. When we were approximately 1 mile from the outermost marine ships, Luffy took his position at the Sunny's figurehead. He removed both stones from around his neck, holding one in each hand. Ready, Nami, he called back. I consulted my weather charts one last time, then nodded. Ready. Atmospheric conditions are already unstable. We just need to push them over the edge. Everyone else, secure for rough weather. Luffy ordered. The crew scrambled to prepare the ship, tying down loose equipment and setting the sails for maximum maneuverability. Zoro took position directly behind Luffy, swords ready. Robin stood at the stern, her manuscript clutched securely in one hand while multiple extra arms sprouted along the railing for stability. Here we go, Luffy murmured, raising both stones high. The effect was immediate and awe-inspiring. The crimson tide blazed red as blood, while the azure current glowed with a blue so intense it hurt to look at directly. Where their lights met, purple energy crackled like lightning. The sea around the Sunny began to churn, waves rising unnaturally high before collapsing back into troughs deep enough to momentarily reveal the ocean floor. Simultaneously, the wind shifted, swirling into circular patterns that pulled clouds from miles around into a tightening spiral above Water 7. "It's working!" I shouted over the rising gale, checking my instruments. "Barometric pressure is plummeting. Wind speeds approaching hurricane force." The surrounding ships, both marine and pirate, were caught completely unprepared. They pitched violently as the sudden storm hit them from all sides, their crews struggling to secure sails and maintain position. But the Sunny sailed serenely through the chaos, guided by Luffy's connection to the elemental forces themselves. The hurricane-force wind seemed to part around us, while the massive waves became our highway, propelling us forward with incredible speed. "They're trying to fire on us," Usopp called from his position at the stern cannon. "But they can't get a steady aim in these conditions." Through the swirling mists of rain and sea spray, I could see the marine blockade disintegrating as ships fought to avoid colliding with one another. Our path to Water 7 lay open before us. "Full speed ahead," Luffy commanded, his voice carrying despite the storm's roar. Straight to the central plaza. Water 7's unique structure, built around a central fountain with canals radiating outward like spokes, made it possible for ships to sail deep into the city itself. Under Frankie's expert guidance, the Sunny shot through the main water gate and into the Grand Canal, riding the flood surge created by the supernatural storm. Citizens ran for cover as we passed, staring in awe at the pirate ship sailing boldly into their city while elemental chaos raged around it. "The stone's in." Luffy's hands pulsed brighter with each passing moment, their power visibly flowing into him and through him. "Something's happening to the current," Frankie called out suddenly. "We're slowing down." He was right. Despite the storm's continued fury, the water beneath us had become strangely resistant, pushing back against our forward momentum. "Ice," Robin identified, pointing ahead. "Someone's freezing the canal." Sure enough, the water before us was crystallizing rapidly, a sheet of ice spreading from the central plaza outward. Behind us, the same phenomenon blocked our retreat. "Akiji," I whispered, remembering our previous encounter with the Marine Admiral. Luffy nodded grimly. "Not just him." As the Sunny glided to a halt, now surrounded by frozen water on all sides, the storm above began to dissipate, not naturally, but as if being systematically dismantled by an opposing force. "Another stone," Robin realized aloud. "The government has one of the remaining pieces." Luffy lowered his hands, though the stones continued to pulse with energy. 3 against 2, he murmured. "Not great odds." Before we could discuss further, a voice boomed across the frozen plaza, amplified by some unseen device. "Straw Hat Luffy. This is Fleet Admiral Sengoku. You are surrounded by the full might of Marine Headquarters. Surrender the artifacts immediately." Around us, Marine soldiers appeared on rooftops and bridges, hundreds of them, all with weapons trained on our ship. Among them stood several familiar figures, Akiji's towering form, Vice Admiral Garp's sturdy silhouette, and at the center, Sengoku himself, resplendent in his official uniform. "Quite the reception committee," Sanji commented dryly. Luffy stepped forward to the railing, still holding both stones. His voice, when he spoke, carried naturally across the plaza without need for amplification. "I'm not here to fight you, Sengoku. I'm here to talk." A ripple of confusion passed through the assembled Marines. This clearly wasn't the response they had expected from the notorious pirate who had defied the world government so brazenly. "There is nothing to discuss," Sengoku replied after a moment. "The artifacts you possess threaten world security. They must be placed under government control immediately." "Why?" Luffy challenged. "So you can hide them away. Keep using the power to maintain your version of justice." He held up the stones, their light intensifying. "These don't belong to the government. They don't even belong to me. They belong to the world, to everyone." Dangerous rhetoric, came a new voice, cold, calculating, and somehow more menacing for its calm delivery. From behind the line of Marines stepped a figure I'd hoped never to see again, Rob Lucci of CP9, his piercing eyes fixed on Luffy with predatory intent. The common people have no understanding of such power, Lucci continued. No capacity to wield it responsibly. That is why the world government exists, to protect civilization from its own worst impulses. By erasing history? Robin called out, stepping forward with her manuscript. By destroying entire islands that dare to seek knowledge? By executing anyone who questions your authority? Murmurs ran through the crowd of onlookers who had gathered despite the danger. Water 7's citizens, initially driven to shelter by the storm, were now emerging to witness the confrontation. The world government has maintained peace for 800 years, Sengoku declared. What you call oppression, we call order. False order, came yet another voice, this one from behind us. We turned to see multiple ships breaking through the ice barrier we thought sealed our escape route. They flew no marine colors, no traditional pirate flags. Instead, each vessel displayed a simple symbol, a red dragon. The Revolutionary Army, Zoro identified, tension evident in his voice. Though none of us had ever seen them in person, there was no mistaking the disciplined forces of the world's most wanted man. They deployed with military precision, establishing positions on the opposite side of the plaza from the Marines, effectively surrounding us with a second force. This just keeps getting better, Usopp moaned. A tall figure stood at the prow of the lead revolutionary ship, his face obscured by a hood but his commanding presence unmistakable. Though he made no move to reveal himself fully, I knew instinctively who it must be. Dragon, Robin whispered. Luffy's father. The hooded figure raised one hand in what might have been a salute, or a signal. Immediately, the revolutionary forces raised weapons, not pointing them at us, but at the Marines. Straw Hat Luffy, the figure called, his voice carrying easily across the water. The artifacts you possess could end the world government's reign of tyranny forever. Join us. Help us create a world of true freedom. Luffy stared at the hooded revolutionary for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Was he tempted by the offer? By the chance to ally with his own father? Before he could respond, the situation escalated further. From a side canal emerged several more ships, the pirate vessels that had been part of the blockade, now led by a massive raft-like construct that seemed cobbled together from pieces of multiple ships. At its center stood a large, bearded man with a booming laugh that echoed across the frozen plaza. Zihahaha. What a gathering of powers. The Marines, the revolutionaries, and the little straw hat who thinks he's found the One Piece. Blackbeard, Zoro growled, all three swords now drawn. Marshal D. Teach, known as Blackbeard, a rising power among pirates, notorious for his ruthlessness and ambition. I'd heard stories of his strange ability to control darkness itself, a power that somehow negated other devil fruit abilities. Three sides, all wanting the same thing, Blackbeard called out, his gold teeth glinting in the sunlight that now broke through the dissipating storm clouds. But only I understand what the One Piece truly means, power. The power to take whatever you want, to rule the seas as you see fit. The standoff had become a four-way confrontation, Marines representing the world government's order, revolutionaries fighting for systemic change, Blackbeard and his pirate alliance seeking personal power, and us, the Straw Hat crew, caught in the middle with the prizes everyone coveted. Luffy surveyed the scene calmly, seemingly unfazed by the overwhelming forces surrounding us. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed, a genuine, carefree laugh that echoed his old self. You're all missing the point, he declared, holding the stones higher. The One Piece isn't about control or power or even changing the world. It's about freedom. As if responding to his declaration, both stones flared brilliantly, their lights extending outward in sweeping beams that touched the frozen canal waters. Immediately, the ice began to crack and shift, not melting but rather transforming, rising into pillars of water that defied gravity, forming a protective ring around the Thousand Sunny. The stones have chosen their bearer, Robin called out, her voice carrying to all sides of the plaza. Throughout history, they have selected those worthy to carry their power, not those who seek control, but those who embody the spirit of true freedom. Propaganda and mysticism, Lucci dismissed coldly. They are tools, nothing more. Then why can't you control them? Luffy challenged. Your government has one of the five, right? But it fights you, resists you. Because you want to use it to maintain your power over others. Sengoku's expression darkened. Enough talk. Straw Hat Luffy, I will not ask again. Surrender the artifacts and your crew, or face the combined might of Marine headquarters. And if he refuses to surrender to either side? The hooded revolutionary, Dragon, called out. Will you destroy Water 7 as you destroyed O'Hara? Sacrifice thousands of innocent lives in your pursuit of absolute justice? The citizens who had gathered to watch shifted uneasily at these words. Many began to back away, suddenly aware of the danger should full-scale battle erupt in their city. No one needs to die today, Luffy stated firmly. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to speak the truth. He nodded to Robin, who stepped forward with her manuscript. For 800 years, she began, her voice clear and strong, the world government has hidden the true history of our world. They erased an entire civilization, the ancient kingdom, from all records. They outlawed the very language that could tell its story. And they hunted down anyone who sought to uncover the truth. Silence her. Sengoku ordered, and several Marines raised rifles. Before they could fire, a swirling darkness erupted between them and our ship, Blackbeard's power, creating a gravitational field that dragged their weapons from their hands. Let the woman speak, Blackbeard called with mock politeness. I'm curious to hear these truths myself. Robin continued, undeterred. The ancient kingdom possessed advanced technology and a philosophy of freedom that threatened the control of what would become the 20 kingdoms, the founders of today's world government. In their fear, these kingdoms united to destroy their rival completely, then rewrote history to erase all memory of what they had done. This is treason, Lucci stated flatly. It's history, Robin countered. My people died for this knowledge. O'Hara burned so this truth would never reach the world. But the One Piece preserved it, stored within these stones is the memory of what was lost. Luffy stepped forward again, the stones pulsing in time with his heartbeat. I've seen it. The ancient kingdom. The war that destroyed it. The weapons they created in desperation, the ancient weapons that the government still fears. Today. A ripple of shock passed through all assembled forces. The ancient weapons were the stuff of legend, Pluton, Poseidon, Uranus, capabilities so destructive they could reshape continents. But that's not why I'm here, Luffy continued. I don't care about ancient wars or who was right or wrong hundreds of years ago. I care about now. About freedom now. He raised the stones higher, and their light intensified, spreading across the plaza in patterns that mirrored the chart we'd found with them, the chart of currents that revealed hidden paths through the world's waters. These stones don't belong to any government or revolutionary or pirate crew, Luffy declared. They belong to the sea itself, to the freedom of the sea. The One Piece isn't treasure to possess. It's the key to being truly free. For a moment, no one moved. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as Luffy's words hung over the assembled forces. Then Blackbeard laughed again, that distinctive, mocking zihahaha, that set my teeth on edge. Pretty words, Straw Hat. But in the real world, power is freedom. The strong take what they want, and the weak suffer what they must. He stepped forward, darkness swirling around his massive frame. I'll show you what the One Piece really means in the hands of someone not afraid to use it. With shocking speed for someone of his size, Blackbeard lunged forward, a wave of darkness extending from his hand toward our ship. Simultaneously, Marines began advancing from multiple directions, while the revolutionary forces moved to intercept them. Chaos erupted across the plaza as the uneasy standoff dissolved into all-out conflict. Marines clashed with revolutionaries, Blackbeard's pirate alliance attacked both sides indiscriminately, and in the center of it all stood the Thousand Sunny, surrounded by the liquid pillars created by Luffy's power. Now what? Usopp squeaked, loading his slingshot with trembling hands. Luffy's expression was unnervingly calm as he surveyed the battle unfolding around us. Now we show them what freedom really looks like. He turned to our shipwright. Frankie, is the Sunny ready? Frankie grinned, flipping open a panel on his massive forearm to reveal a complex control system. Super ready, Captain. Just say the word. Everyone to battle stations, Luffy ordered. But remember, we're not here to defeat them. We're here to transcend them. As the fighting intensified around us, each member of our crew moved with a synchronicity born from countless battles together. But this time felt different. Instead of chaotic individual actions, we operated as a single unit, guided by Luffy's unwavering focus. Zoro leapt from the ship onto one of the water pillars, using it as a platform to intercept Blackbeard's darkness. His three swords glowed with an energy I'd never seen before, somehow cutting through the insubstantial darkness as if it were solid. Impossible. Blackbeard growled as his attack dissipated against Zoro's blades. Nothing can cut darkness. Nothing you've encountered before, Zoro replied with a predatory grin, the stone's light reflecting in his single open eye. But my captain has shown me what lies beyond the visible world. Sanji, meanwhile, took to the air with his skywalk technique, raining down kicks that created pressure waves to repel advancing marines without causing lethal damage. His movements were precise, controlled, defense rather than offense. Usopp, stationed at the Sunny's stern, fired his pop greens with uncanny accuracy, creating barriers of rapidly growing plants that separated clashing forces rather than targeting either side directly. Chopper shifted between his forms with fluid grace, rescuing injured civilians caught in the crossfire and creating a safe perimeter around our ship. Robin, still holding her manuscript, used her multiple arms to distribute copies to the citizens of Water 7 who had gathered to watch, ensuring the truth would spread regardless of the battle's outcome. And I concentrated on manipulating the weather conditions created by Luffy's stones, using my climate baton to direct wind and rain in patterns that impeded the fighting without causing harm. Through it all, Luffy stood at the center, not fighting, but maintaining the water pillars that both protected our ship and demonstrated the power he now commanded. His expression remained serene, focused, as if he could see beyond the immediate chaos to some greater purpose. Blackbeard, frustrated by Zoro's defense, switched tactics. If I can't take the stones by force, I'll give you a choice, Straw Hat, he called out, his darkness spreading to engulf several civilians who had been unable to flee the plaza. Release them. Luffy demanded, the stones flaring brighter with his anger. Give me the stones, and I will, Blackbeard grinned malevolently. Or watch these innocents disappear into darkness forever. For the first time since the confrontation began, Luffy's calm demeanor cracked. Rage flashed across his face, but it was quickly replaced by something else, resolution. You still don't understand, he said quietly, though his voice carried across the plaza. The One Piece isn't something you take. It's something you become. With those words, he brought both stones together in his hands. Their separate lights, crimson and azure, merged into a brilliant purple glow that engulfed Luffy completely. When it faded seconds later, the stones had vanished, seemingly absorbed into his very being. The effect was immediate and stunning. The water pillars surrounding our ship exploded outward, not as destructive waves but as flowing tendrils that moved with impossible precision. They wrapped around Blackbeard's darkness, neutralizing it and gently extracting the trapped civilians before returning them safely to dry ground. Simultaneously, the wind shifted, forming a dome of calm air over the entire plaza while rain fell in a perfect circle around its perimeter, creating a boundary that separated the combatants without harming them. What is this power? Sengoku demanded, genuine awe breaking through his authoritative facade. Not power, Luffy replied, his voice somehow both his own and something greater. Harmony. Balance. The true nature of the One Piece. He raised his hands, and the sea itself responded, not just the frozen canal beneath us, but the entire harbor of Water 7. Water rose in countless streams, forming an intricate network above the city that mirrored the chart of currents, a physical manifestation of the hidden paths that connected the world's oceans. For 800 years, Luffy continued, his voice carrying effortlessly to every corner of the plaza. The world government has maintained control by keeping people divided, separated by seas, by status, by knowledge. But the world isn't meant to be divided. It's meant to be connected. The water streams above began to glow with the same purple light that had engulfed Luffy, creating a canopy of luminescence that bathed the entire city. The ancient kingdom understood this. They built bridges instead of walls. They shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. They believed in freedom, not just for the powerful, but for everyone. Luffy looked directly at Sengoku. That's why your predecessors destroyed them. Not because they were a threat, but because they offered an alternative to control. Sengoku's expression hardened. You speak of matters you cannot comprehend, Straw Hat. The world requires order, stability, the world requires balance, Luffy countered. Between order and freedom. Between tradition and progress. The One Piece isn't a weapon to overthrow your government. It's a reminder of what was lost, and what could be again. I noticed something extraordinary happening around us. The citizens of Water 7, initially frozen in fear, were now moving closer, drawn by Luffy's words and the beautiful display above them. Their faces showed wonder rather than terror, curiosity rather than panic. Even more remarkably, some of the Marines and revolutionaries had lowered their weapons, similarly captivated by the spectacle and the message behind it. This is your last warning, Straw Hat, Sengoku declared, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Surrender the power you've taken, or face the consequences. Luffy smiled, not his usual carefree grin, but something wiser, more knowing. I haven't taken anything. I've been entrusted with something. And now I understand why. He turned to address all sides of the conflict simultaneously. Marines. You fight for justice and order. Revolutionaries. You fight for change and equality. Pirates. You fight for freedom and adventure. All noble causes on their own, but unbalanced, destructive when taken to extremes. The water streams above shifted again, forming three interconnected circles that slowly rotated around each other. The One Piece isn't about choosing sides in this endless conflict. It's about transcending it entirely. Finding a new path. From the shadows of the revolutionary forces, the hooded figure of Dragon stepped forward slightly. Though his face remained obscured, his posture suggested he was listening intently to his son's words. So what is your path, Straw Hat Luffy? Dragon called out, the first time he had directly addressed his son. Luffy turned toward his father's voice, emotion briefly flickering across his face before his resolve returned. My path is the same as it's always been, he replied. To be free. To sail with my friends. To see what lies beyond the horizon. He gestured to the water display above. But now I understand that true freedom isn't just about doing whatever you want. It's about creating a world where everyone has the chance to follow their dreams. Pretty ideals, Blackbeard sneered, though his darkness had receded significantly. But the world doesn't work that way. The strong will always dominate the weak. Only if we let them, Luffy countered. Only if we accept that as the natural order. With a gesture, he brought the water streams down, not in a destructive deluge but in a gentle rain that fell over the entire plaza. As the droplets touched each person present, Marine, revolutionary, pirate, and civilian alike, they glowed briefly with that same purple light before being absorbed. What I've found isn't the weapon you fear, Luffy continued. It's knowledge. Truth. The memory of a time when the world was balanced, when strength served freedom rather than dominating it. He turned to the Thousand Sunny, where our crew stood watching with mixed expressions of awe and pride. And that's what being Pirate King really means to me. Not ruling the seas. Not possessing the greatest treasure. But being the freest person alive, and using that freedom to help others find their own. For a moment, perfect silence fell over Water 7. Even the sea itself seemed to hold its breath as Luffy's words hung in the air. Then, from somewhere in the crowd of watching citizens, a single voice called out, "Straw Hat! Straw Hat!" Another joined, then another, until the chant spread through the gathered people of Water 7 like wildfire. Straw Hat! Straw Hat! The Marines looked uncertain, their discipline wavering as they witnessed the public's reaction. The revolutionaries watched with calculating interest, perhaps reassessing their own approach in light of this unexpected development. And Blackbeard, his face darkened with fury as he realized the momentum had shifted completely away from him. "This changes nothing," he roared, darkness gathering around him once more. "Fine words and pretty lights won't remake the world, Straw Hat. Only strength can do that." He lunged forward again, this time targeting Luffy directly with a concentrated blast of his dark power. But Luffy didn't dodge or defend. Instead, he simply stood his ground as the darkness engulfed him completely. "Luffy!" I screamed, certain we were witnessing our captain's end. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Blackbeard's triumphant laugh echoed across the suddenly silent plaza. Then, from within the heart of darkness, light emerged, not the purple glow from before, but Luffy's own life force, his will made visible. The darkness receded, driven back by something more fundamental than mere power. "You still don't get it, Teach," Luffy said quietly as he emerged unscathed. "The One Piece isn't about who's strongest. It's about who understands what strength is for." Blackbeard stumbled backward, genuine fear crossing his face for perhaps the first time in his pirate career. What are you?" Luffy smiled, his old, familiar smile, the one that had drawn all of us to follow him in the first place. "Just a pirate who's going to be king someday," he replied simply. "But not by conquering. By freeing." Before Blackbeard could respond, a massive explosion rocked the harbor, not an attack, but a signal. All eyes turned to see a new fleet entering Water 7's waters, an alliance of pirate ships flying familiar flags. Shanks' Red Force led the formation, followed by vessels bearing the marks of Whitebeard, Big Mom, and other major powers of the sea. "What now?" Usopp groaned. "More pirates." "Not enemies," Zoro identified, a rare smile crossing his face. "Allies." Indeed, the new arrivals positioned themselves not against us but alongside us, creating yet another force in the already complex standoff. From the Red Force, a familiar red-haired figure called out, "That was quite a speech, Anchor. Your dad and I might disagree on many things, but we both raised one hell of a kid." "Shanks." Luffy's face lit up with genuine joy at the sight of his childhood hero. The one-armed pirate grinned, then turned a more serious expression toward Sengoku and the assembled marine forces. "Fleet Admiral. You might want to reconsider your position here. This isn't just about the Straw Hats anymore. This is about the future of the seas. Themselves." Sengoku's jaw tightened as he assessed the new balance of forces. With the arrival of multiple Emperor-level pirates, the Marines were now potentially outmatched, a situation he clearly hadn't anticipated. "This isn't over, Straw Hat," he declared after a tense moment. "The world government cannot allow such power to remain in the hands of a pirate, any pirate." "Then don't think of me as a pirate," Luffy replied. "Think of me as a caretaker. These stones, this knowledge, it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the world. I'm just making sure it's used for freedom, not control." Another figure stepped forward from the Marine ranks, Vice Admiral Garp, Luffy's grandfather. Though he wore the uniform of the world government, his expression conveyed complex emotions as he looked at his grandson. "You've put us all in an impossible position, boy," he said gruffly. "The Gorosei won't let this stand." "I know," Luffy acknowledged. But maybe it's time they reconsidered what justice really means. Garp barked a short laugh. Always the idealist. Just like your father. He turned to Sengoku. Fleet Admiral, I suggest a tactical withdrawal. This isn't a battle we can win today, not without destroying the very city we claim to protect. Sengoku's expression remained hard, but after surveying the scene, Marines outnumbered, civilians firmly on the Straw Hat's side, multiple pirate emperors prepared for battle, he gave a curt nod. Marines! Withdraw to your ships. We will regroup and reassess. He fixed Luffy with a steely glare. This isn't victory, Straw Hat. This is merely postponement. As the Marine forces began an orderly retreat, Dragon signaled his own people to stand down as well. The revolutionary leader stepped forward fully for the first time, though he still kept his face partially concealed. You've achieved something remarkable today, Luffy, he said, his deep voice carrying easily across the diminishing chaos. You've shown there's a third path, neither government control nor revolutionary overthrow, but transformation through truth. Luffy stared at his father, emotions warring on his expressive face. This was the man he'd never known, the world's most wanted revolutionary, the shadow that had inadvertently shaped his life in countless ways. I wasn't trying to make a statement, he replied finally. I just wanted to be free to follow my dream without hurting anyone else's freedom. Dragon nodded, something like pride glinting in his eyes. Sometimes the simplest desires create the greatest revolutions. He glanced toward Sengoku's retreating forces. They'll come for you again, with greater numbers and deadlier intent. Let them come, Luffy replied without hesitation. I'll be ready. As the revolutionary forces also began to withdraw, Dragon paused. The offer stands, Luffy. There's a place for you in our movement, for all of you. His gaze swept over our crew. Think about it. With that, he pulled his hood closer and disappeared into the shadows of his departing fleet. Only Blackbeard remained, his pirate alliance now significantly outnumbered by Shanks' coalition. The dark pirate's face twisted with fury and frustration. This isn't the end, Straw Hat, he snarled. You think you found the One Piece? You've barely scratched the surface of its power. There are still 3 more stones out there, and I will find them before you. Luffy's expression hardened. Then we'll see each other again, Teach. Count on it. Blackbeard spat before retreating with his forces, darkness swirling around them like a malevolent fog. As the various factions withdrew, leaving the central plaza of Water 7 remarkably intact despite the confrontation, our crew finally exhaled collectively. Against all odds, we'd stood our ground against the combined might of the world's greatest powers, and emerged not just alive, but victorious. Shanks approached our ship, jumping nimbly from his small boat to the Sunny's deck. Up close, the legendary pirate seemed both exactly as I'd imagined from Luffy's stories and somehow more. His presence conveyed a depth of experience that no tale could capture. You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest, Luffy, he observed with a wry smile, glancing at the retreating fleets. The entire world will be talking about this day. Luffy grinned, suddenly looking more like his old self than he had in weeks. I learned from the best troublemaker. Shanks laughed, then grew serious as his gaze fixed on Luffy's chest, where the stones had seemingly been absorbed. The Crimson Tide and the Azure Current. I never thought I'd see them united again in my lifetime. You knew about them? Robin asked sharply. About their connection to the One Piece. Roger showed them to me once, Shanks nodded. He found 3 of the 5, but chose not to unite them. Said the world wasn't ready. His gaze returned to Luffy. But perhaps it's ready now, or perhaps you're ready to show it a new way. I don't know if I'm ready for anything, Luffy admitted. I just know running and hiding wasn't the answer. No, Shanks agreed. It never is. Not for men who would be kings. He clapped Luffy on the shoulder. My alliance will provide cover for your departure. The Marines will be regrouping, but they won't challenge all of us together, not yet, anyway. You're helping us escape? I asked, surprised by this direct intervention from a pirate who typically avoided such entanglements. Shanks turned his penetrating gaze on me. I'm helping balance the scales, navigator. What your captain has begun here today is too important to be snuffed out before it has a chance to grow. He looked back at Luffy. The world is changing, Anchor. You're changing it. Make sure it's changing for the better. With those words and a final smile, he returned to his ship. Within the hour, the extraordinary assembly of forces that had converged on Water 7 had dispersed, Marines retreating to their headquarters, revolutionaries melting back into the shadows, Blackbeard's alliance slinking away to lick their wounds, and Shanks' coalition providing a protective screen around our departure. As the Thousand Sunny sailed from Water 7 under full canvas, I joined Luffy at the figurehead, his special seat, where he'd always seemed most at home. Where to now, Captain? I asked softly. He touched his chest, where the merged stones now resided, somehow incorporated into his very being. 3 more pieces out there, according to Rayleigh and Blackbeard. We need to find them before anyone else does. And then? He looked out at the horizon, his expression thoughtful but no longer burdened. And then we finish what we started. Not just finding the one piece, but understanding what it really means, what being Pirate King really means. Which is? I prompted, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Luffy smiled, that pure, uncomplicated smile that had first convinced me to join his crazy crew. Freedom. Not just for me, but for everyone. That's what the ancient kingdom believed in. That's what Roger discovered but couldn't fully realize. And that's what we're going to fight for, a world where everyone has the freedom to follow their dreams. The sea stretched endlessly before us, both challenge and promise in its blue expanse. Whatever lay ahead, Marines, rival pirates, the remaining stones of the One Piece, I knew with absolute certainty that this was where I belonged. Not because Luffy possessed some ancient power or legendary treasure, but because he understood what that power was truly for. Sounds like quite an adventure, I smiled. The best kind, he agreed, eyes bright with renewed purpose. The kind that never really ends. As the Sunny caught the wind and accelerated toward the open sea, I couldn't help but think about how far we'd come from our humble beginnings. We'd set out to find treasure, to fulfill individual dreams, Zoro to become the world's greatest swordsman, me to map the entire world, Sanji to find the All Blue, and all the rest. Somewhere along the way, those individual dreams had merged into something greater, a shared vision of a world with more freedom, more connection, more possibility for everyone. Perhaps that was the true One Piece all along, not gold or jewels or even magical stones, but the power to imagine a better world and the courage to make it real. Behind us, Water 7 receded into the distance. Before us lay the next stage of our journey, more dangerous than ever, with the entire world now watching our every move. But for the first time since we'd stumbled upon that uncharted island and found the Crimson Tide, I felt genuine hope rather than just determination. We hadn't finished our adventure. In many ways, we'd only just begun. In the marble halls of Mariehua, 5 elderly men sat in grim silence around a circular table. The Gorosei, the highest authority of the world government, answerable only to the mysterious Im-sama, had just received Sengoku's report of the Water 7 incident. Unacceptable, the bald elder with the cross-shaped scar finally pronounced. The straw hat has made a mockery of our authority in front of the entire world. Worse, added the elder with the long white beard, he's revealed truths about the void century that we've spent centuries suppressing. The damage is incalculable. The stones are the greater concern, countered the blonde elder, tapping a long finger against the table's polished surface. 2 have already merged with him. If he acquires the remaining 3, then he could potentially restore what we destroyed 800 years ago, finished the elder with the tall hat. The ancient kingdom could rise again. Not if we find the remaining stones first, the 5th elder noted, adjusting his spectacles. We still possess the Amber Earth. That leaves only the emerald flame and the diamond sky unaccounted for. Our intelligence suggests Blackbeard is already hunting. The emerald flame, reported the scarred elder. He believes it's hidden on Laugh Tale itself. Then we face a race, the bearded elder concluded. Straw Hat, Blackbeard, and ourselves, all seeking the same prizes. There's another factor, the bespectacled elder added reluctantly. The broadcast from Water 7 has gone global. Public sentiment is shifting. Many are questioning our version of history for the first time in centuries. A heavy silence fell as they considered the implications. Perhaps, the tall-hatted elder finally suggested, it's time to awaken the ancient weapons ourselves. Fight fire with fire. Too risky, countered the blonde immediately. We could destroy what we're trying to protect. The scarred elder rose from his seat, moving to the window that overlooked the holy city of Mariehua. We have maintained order for 800 years. We will not falter now. He turned back to his colleagues, resolution hardening his aged features. Assemble the cipher pulls. Contact our agents in the underworld. Mobilize every resource at our disposal. And the straw hat? Asked the bearded elder. Monkey D. Luffy is now our primary target. Him, his crew, and anyone who aids them. The scarred elder's voice was cold as ice. The age of pirates has continued far too long. It's time to bring it to an end, permanently. As the Gorosei dispersed to implement their strategy, none noticed the small figure watching from the shadows, a chambermaid who had overheard every word. She slipped away silently, making her way through servants' passages until she reached a secluded courtyard. There, she removed a miniature den mushi from her pocket and spoke quietly into it, the storm is gathering. The old men fear the dawn. Inform the dragon that the straw hat now faces the full wrath of Mariehua. Miles away, on a revolutionary ship sailing through darkness, the snail receiver conveyed her message to a hooded figure standing alone on deck. Monkey D. Dragon smiled slightly as he disconnected the call. Well played, son, he murmured to the distant horizon. You've accomplished in one day what we've struggled to achieve for decades. He raised his face to the night sky, where stars blazed in patterns as ancient as the world itself. The wind is changing. The currents shift. A new era approaches. Around him, the sea stretched endlessly in all directions, mysterious, powerful, and above all, free. Just like the pirate who had unwittingly started a revolution with nothing more than a simple dream and an unbreakable will. The journey of the Straw Hat Pirates was far from over. In many ways, it had only just begun. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.